Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto was twin brother of Rias part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Was it over? No. It couldn't be. It just couldn't. There was still so much he needed to do. So much he had yet to achieve. He needed to become Hokage to prove everyone wrong about him. He needed to bring Sasuke back even though he no longer wanted to. Still, he needed to fulfill his promise to Sakura-chan. So why the heck was he floating here in this void? Hey! Let me out of here, damn it! He cried loudly only to be greeted by the echo of his own voice and nothing else. I said get me out of here! Sure, calm down, child. Naruto's head snapped aside, and he gaped when he saw a woman floating in this accursed white void. The woman was beautiful. No, that was too little a word, she was divine. Everything about her was perfect, and the way she looked at him with those glowing golden eyes made him feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Who are you? He asked, and the woman floated towards him until she was just an arm's length away. Naruto shuddered pleasantly as the woman threaded one of her hands through his golden blonde hair. I'm so sorry, Naruto-kun. The woman ignored his question and just continued to thread her hand through his hair. You shouldn't be here yet. What do you mean by that? He asked wearily, and yet he only had to look at the woman to get his answer. Don't tell me am I D? Yes, I'm afraid that you are. Naruto choked on his breath, and he felt his eyes begin to water. You shouldn't be. In another timeline you survived and there you would be talking about going on a 3-year training trip with the man you call Pervy Sage. But not in this one. Here Sasuke Uchiha killed you by piercing your heart and sending 100,000 volts of electricity through your body. In another timeline Lieutenant the Ninetales would be healed the damage and restored your heart to working order. Here the fox refused and chose to wait the years it would take for him to reform. And no, it can't be. Naruto felt tears streak down his cheeks. It can't be true. Please tell me that it's not true. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but it's the truth. Then please send me back. He pleaded. Please, you can do that, right? You must be Kami, which means that you must have the power to send me back, right? Please, I don't want to die yet. Naruto watched in shock as a lone tear escaped the woman's right eye and his heart clenched when she slowly shook her head. I'm afraid that's not within my power or domain. Death is governed over by the Shinigami and not I, but even if I had control over the domain, I couldn't or rather wouldn't send you back. But why not? You're Kami, what's stopping you from sending me back, especially since you said that I'm not supposed to be here? He looked away from the woman. It was painful to look at her because despite his distress her mere presence seemed to soothe him. He didn't want to be soothed though, he wanted to be angry at her and everything else. You make it sound so easy, Naruto-kun. The goddess sighed wistfully. I love every human equally, so if I had the power to reject every unfair and unjust death, then don't you think that I would do so? We gods and goddesses exist by a strict set of rules, rules which were created by the ones that came before, rules written and anchored into the very fabric of existence. And among the more important of those rules is the one that declares that we divine beings cannot interfere in the affairs of mortals. You and your kindred humans are meant to be free, allowed to do and act as you please, whether that be good or ill is solely up to you. But Naruto didn't know what he could say to that. He felt angry, sad, devastated, and so many things more, but that didn't stop him from realizing that a little goddess was explaining herself to him. You don't want to die, I know, I understand. It's not easy to leave behind an unfinished and unfulfilled life, but sometimes bad things happen to the best of us, and there is nothing that we can change about it. We gods are not an exception to this either. Naruto nodded with a heavy heart. He understood, well maybe not, but he knew that this was no fault of Kami's, it was Sasuke's. He just hoped that his death would at the very least mean something. But what now? Where will I go? What will happen to me? He asked the goddess who was still softly threading a hand through his hair. What happens now is up to you, Naruto-kun. Said boy looked at the goddess in confusion, a little comedic question mark floating above his head. What do you mean, Kami-sama? The reason for my actions is rather simple, my boy. I find that your life was quite unfulfilling, wouldn't you agree? Naruto blinked at the godly woman. Yes? I mean, of course. There's so much I wanted to do. I agree. This is why I came up with a wonderful idea that would allow you to pursue and fulfill at least some of your dreams. But I thought that you couldn't send me back. Did you change your mind or something? His tone was filled with hope and longing, but it was shot down when the goddess shook her head at him. I can't revive you. I cannot affect the living, but I can affect the dead and those that are yet to be born. Thanks to the Shinigami handing your soul to me, I can now make you an offer. What offer would that be? A new start. What? I can offer you a new life. To be born once more, to a different family, in a different world. The life of Uzumaki Naruto might be over, but that does not mean that the story of Naruto has ended quite yet. But wouldn't I be reborn anyway? You're a perceptive one, aren't you? Naruto chuckled awkwardly with a small blush on his cheeks. But to answer your question, yes, in time you would have been reborn naturally. You could be reborn tomorrow, in 10,000 years, or even 10,000 years ago. Time is meaningless to the cycle of rebirth. But if you were to be reborn naturally, all that you now are would be gone. You'd be a blank slate once more, with all traces of Uzumaki Naruto lost and forgotten. I offer you a new start with your identity intact. A new start as the person you are right now, and with that a chance for you to become who you were meant to be had your life not been cut short. But the choice is yours. You can take me up on my offer, or you can refuse. It is up to you, my child. So, if I take your offer, I'd still be me? Yes, you would. Everything that you've experienced, all that you've done and learned, it would all stay with you, that I promise. Naruto took a few moments to think about it, but in truth, he found nothing bad about the offer, no matter how much he searched. If he would be reborn anyways, then he would at the very least like to keep his memories. Even if his life had been short and painful, he would very much like to stay himself if that was a possibility, and he would very much enjoy a chance to fulfill his dreams. He might have broken many of his promises already, but he was not one to quit. So, with new determination shining in his blue eyes, Naruto nodded at the goddess. I take you up on your offer, Kami-sama. Wonderful. I promise that you won't regret your decision. The goddess smiled at him, and Naruto felt his vision begin to blacken and blur, and not long after he was completely overtaken by darkness. You will do wonderfully, Naruto-kun. The goddess smiled down at the unconscious boy. You'll lead a good life, I'll make sure of it, but it will not be easy. You'll face many challenges, and you'll find your morals and character tested, but I know that you'll rise to the challenge, my beautiful child of prophecy. I still don't like this, Zio. I think you made a big mistake with that contract. A beautiful woman stated, crossing her arms beneath her ample bust. The woman's appearance was one of such beauty that it was difficult to put words to it. Flaxen hair cascaded down her back and shoulders, framing a face of true feminine perfection. Eyes the shade of amethyst seemed to glow in the dim candlelit chambers, and her shapely body was laid bare before the eyes of her husband. But what stood out even beyond all her naked glory was the glow of love and happiness that seemed to seep from her every pore as her dainty hands stroked her swollen belly, her every caress soft and gentle, to not startle the growing babes within her. I know, love, I know. Her husband allowed a long-suffering sigh to escape his lips. Believe me when I say that I dislike this contract as much as you do, but what would you have me do about it? The woman felt the bed she was lying on dip, and she could not keep the gentle smile off her face when she felt her husband's hands join hers in caressing her pregnant belly. But her smile was not meant to last, as thoughts of the contract her beloved had created came crashing back to the forefront of her mind. It's not fair, she whispered, that their life is decided like that before they even had the chance to be born. I know. Her husband agreed readily, but when have politics ever been fair to anyone? Silence followed that statement, interrupted only by the sounds of their breathing and the shuffle of their naked skin against the silken sheets covering their luxurious bed. That was until the husband's voice once more echoed through their chambers. But it's not all black either, my love. The little ones have time, and I'll try to buy them more if they should need it. And the contract will only affect the firstborn. The secondborn will be free to do as he or she pleases, which is more freedom than you, Sirzex, or I had growing up. The woman sighed before a smile, ever so small, bloomed on her face. Yes, I suppose that it could be worse. Still, I can't help but feel like we've failed them already. That might be true, but I have faith in our little ones, the husband murmured with a thoughtful look in his turquoise eyes. What do you mean, Ziaticus? Ziaticus Gremory leaned forward to catch his wife's lips in a chaste kiss. It's nothing, Venelana, my love, I just have this feeling that everything will be fine. Maybe that's my father's intuition speaking to me right now. A very much unladylike snort escaped Venelana Gremory's lips. I don't think that it works that way, but yes, let's call it your father's intuition, but I think you might be right. I too have been getting this feeling that our babies will create quite the stir when they're grown up. Neither Ziaticus nor Venelana had any idea just how right they were. For a bona fide maelstrom was about to be unleashed unto the poor devils of the underworld. Naruto laughed joyously as he ran through the grand castle of his new family. his hand holding onto a smaller one. He tilted his head aside and looked at her, taking in her beautiful crimson red hair, her big, toothy grin and the sparkle in her turquoise eyes as they ran hand in hand through the grand and illustrious halls. His beautiful twin sister. There were many things that Naruto suspected when he agreed to Kami's offer, but to end up with a clingy twin sister was not one of them. When he was reborn, he could still feel the twinge of pain every time he thought back to the life he lost, the one that he could have had Sasuke not killed him. But those dreary thoughts didn't last long. The moment he experienced what it meant to love and be loved, all thoughts of his previous life as Uzumaki Naruto vanished into the back of his mind, buried beneath the love of his parents, the love of his older siblings, and the unconditional love of his twin sister. He was Naruto Gremory, and he was happy. Oni-chan. He smiled at the cute squeal of little Rias. Come on, we need to run quicker, or he'll catch us. Naruto glanced over his shoulder, and could not quite suppress the snort that escaped him at the sight that greeted him. I'm going to catch you, you little brats. Mark my words, I'm going to catch you for this. There was just something cathartic about seeing his older brother in a state like this. Surzex Lucifer, yeah, he was the little brother of freaking Lucifer, struck quite the image as he chased after his little siblings. Even the servants that the three siblings passed during their impromptu game of chase couldn't keep their laughter in check at seeing the ruler of the underworld running after the two troublemakers of House Gremory. With his usually crimson hair a bright neon pink and his face covered in a clown's makeup. Yup, that people is the king of the underworld, alright, haha. I swear you'll pay for this one. Surzex cried as he sprinted after his younger siblings, his head comically big and a large cloud of dust trailing in his wake. I'm gonna tickle you to death. Mahahaha. You hear that, Rias? That's right, I'm gonna tickle you until you pee yourself from all the laughter. No. Rias squawked in fright and began to run even faster until she was the one to pull Naruto along behind her. You're not going to catch me, Oni-sama. Naruto only laughed joyously as he ran after Rias. He could overtake her again but decided against it, and instead allowed her to lead him wherever. It was not as if they could outrun their older brother anyways. Surzex Lucifer was known as the most powerful devil of the underworld. Naruto was quite sure that if he wanted, he could have caught them long ago. But that was just Surzex. That was their beloved older brother who enjoyed playing with them every chance he got, who never truly got mad at them no matter what they did, and who would always humor them and make a fool out of himself just to get them to smile. Surzex was the way Naruto imagined the perfect older brother to be like. Still laughing, Naruto shouted over his shoulder, "That's what you get for sleeping in your office. If we didn't prank you, then Graffiane would have scolded you, and we all know which would have been worst." Rias giggled cutely. Oni-chan's right. There is no point in talking anymore. Surzex cried dramatically, shots have been fired, and now I want retribution. You drama queen. Naruto shouted back with a big toothy grin splitting his face, if you want to get your payback then you'll just have to catch us. Then suddenly Naruto wasn't moving anymore. Huh? He looked down to see that his legs were still moving along the motions of a sprint, but there was no longer any ground beneath them, he was just flailing them around in midair. He glanced at Rias to see that she was in much the same situation. She had her eyes closed tightly and was kicking her legs wildly. But it was no use, for there was a hand that held her up by the back of her light yellow summer dress. This boded badly, didn't it? Naruto glanced over his shoulder and winced when he saw his brother standing there, holding both twins by the scruff of their necks as if they weighed nothing, which, considering that they were only 5, they really didn't. What was this that you said, little brother? Surzex cocked his head aside and grinned at him. That clown makeup really made him look creepy. Has anyone ever told you that pink suits you? Naruto asked meekly while trying to wiggle himself free from Surzex's grasp. Because it really does. Goes well with the makeup. When Surzex's eye began to twitch, Naruto realized that he done goofed. They were in for it now. So, he did what any overprotective sibling in this situation would do. He cocked his leg forward and let his heel fly back, right into Lucifer's unholy crown jewels. Yes, Naruto would go down, but maybe his little sister would make it to safety. For a moment, the Satan Lucifer just stood there frozen. Then his eyes widened and bulged to the size of saucers. He dropped the twins like hot potatoes and his hands shot to his injured testicles and he bent over in pain. Oh, you kicked me in the damn, you little devil spawn. Naruto winced. Yeah, sorry about that, but you know. Naruto shrugged and turned to Rias. Come on, Rias-chan. He grabbed the stunned girl and took off once more. However, they did not get far before the twins ran into a solid wall of something before Naruto once more felt himself being lifted off the ground. Curse his small and light frame. What do we have here? Both Naruto and Rias grinned at their father, who, like Surzex, had before held them up by the scruff of their necks. Two troublemakers on the loose, and what happened to you, Surzex? Did you fall face first into a rainbow? Zeoticus looked to be struggling with keeping himself from breaking out into laughter at his eldest son's appearance, a struggle that he began to lose, and a few chuckles began to escape him. You know damn well what happened to me, old man. Surzex glared up from his crouched-over position, his eyes focusing on the two dangling children who were whistling innocently. And Naruto, was that kick really necessary? Hey, I had to protect my sister from the creepy clown, Naruto retorted with a cheeky grin on his lips. Why, you little? Okay, enough, you two. Zeoticus cut in, while gently placing Rias down in the ground, and the little minx quickly scrambled behind her father's leg, where she stuck her tongue out at her eldest brother. Naruto, apologize to your brother, and Surzex, please go and wash yourself, you look ridiculous. Thanks, father, I appreciate the compliment. The current Lucifer muttered despondently before he straightened himself out and walked up to Naruto, who was still held up by his father. Anyways, I'm waiting, little brother, let me hear the music. The former shinobi pouted at his older brother before muttering, sorry. Surzex leaned in with a big grin, splitting his makeup-covered face apart. Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite catch what you were saying. I said I'm sorry. Naruto finally relented with a roll of his eyes, crossing his arms as he still dangled a foot above the ground. Now do that again, but say it like you mean it, you little brat. Naruto stuck his tongue out at the king of all devils. That's the best you're gonna get out of me. No respect. Surzex threw his arms up. You'd think that my little brother would idolize me. But no. No, he's a little brat hell-bent on making my days as difficult as possible. Even worse is the fact that thanks to you, my cute little Riatan is becoming so cruel to me as well. Naruto's eyebrow twitched as he watched how his pink-haired makeup-covered clown of a brother made a clown out of himself. Yep, that's my brother, alright, that's my older brother who rules an entire kingdom. Now, to be fair, Nichan, you're kinda asking to be pranked with the way you treat us. Naruto muttered, thinking back to all the embarrassing moments he and Rias had to live through thanks to Surzex. But I can't help it. Surzex cried out, I just have to show my love for my little siblings. Okay, that's enough. Zeoticus cut in sharply, Surzex, go and get yourself washed. You're a busy devil, you shouldn't be wasting your precious time arguing with your brother. And Naruto, if I am not mistaken, you and your sister should be with your teachers right now, no? Do I need to remind you of what your mother would do if she found out that you two were neglecting your studies again? Both twins stiffened and broke out into cold sweats. Even Surzex suddenly looked rather uncomfortable. Oni-chan? Yes, Rias? Shouldn't we be heading back to our studies? Yes, I think we should. Rias grabbed onto her twin's hand, hooking her arm around his in a dignified and ladylike manner before she began to walk away while dragging her brother after her. Not that Naruto minded, he held his head high as he fell into stride with Rias, leaving behind a chuckling father and miffed older brother. Brat, Surzex muttered while trying and failing to wipe off the dusting of paint covering his face. Then why do you keep humoring them? Zeoticus asked with a knowing smirk, slicking back some strands of his bright crimson hair. You know damn well why I do what I do, father. Surzex smiled as he watched his little siblings walk away while acting as if nothing ever happened. That I do, you're a good brother, Surzex. Surzex looked at his father with his usually bright eyes dimming in the waning light of the artificial sun that streamed in through the large several-foot-tall windows that dotted the right side wall of the hallway. I doubt that will be enough. Silence reigned within the large and gilded halls of the Gremory clan's main estate. It was a soothing silence, brought about by early morning hours that saw most of the estate's inhabitants still soundly asleep. Only the steady footfalls of the few guards that patrolled the halls could faintly be heard as a soft echo. Alas, this serenity would not last. It never did. In only a few short hours the estate would be bustling with servants and nobles going after their affairs, and then of course there would be the little lord and the little lady, who would undoubtedly try their best to give the head majordomo even more gray hair than she already had. But that was not yet the case. Because right now the two little Satan spawns were still curled up in their silken sheets, looking as cute as buttons as the little lady held onto her older brother like any other child would a teddy bear. If one would look at them right now, none would suspect them to be the menace that they truly were. Cute little snores and mumbles escaped the twins' lips, and a small line of drool could be seen going down the small girl's cheeks, dripping from her chin onto her brother's crimson locks. The boy in turn frowned as he felt the wetness on his head, causing him to kick and squirm in his sister's hold. And unbeknownst to the twins, someone was looming over their bed, grinning maliciously as the figure reached into his robes to pull out a small object. The object glinted in the soft morning light as the figure raised it, bringing the metallic glinting object into position. The figure stepped closer towards the sleeping children, a grin that was all teeth and eyes that glowed a malicious crimson. If only the sleeping children would wake to stop this demon. Alas, it was not to be. It was far too late now. The nightmarish figure was already too close, and nothing would stop it from doing that which it had set out to do. The figure brought the object in its hands right above the heads of the sleeping children. And then... click. Muhahaha. Click click. Muhahaha. Click click click. Muhahaha. Slowly the small boy woke from his slumber. He frowned when he felt his hair to be wet, and then he groaned once he realized that his dear sister had most likely drenched him in her spittle again, but that was not something unusual to him anymore. What was odd, however, was the sound of clicking and giggling that he could hear. Naruto Gremory wearily opened his eyes, and when he saw the source of all this commotion, he promptly closed his eyes again before letting out another loud and long groan. Surzex? The boy muttered sleepily, why are you taking pictures of your little siblings? While they are sleeping, no less? The boy's tone was bland, and quite frankly, he was too tired to deal with this shit. But why wouldn't I? Surzex cried loudly, which caused little Rias to stir in her sleep, and thus Lucifer earned himself a glare from his little brother. Chuckling and rubbing the back of his head, Surzex gave his brother a weak smile before continuing in a softer tone, after all, how else would I get embarrassing pictures of my little siblings? Neither of you is willing to pose for me while you are awake after all. Naruto just stared blankly at his older brother. I will give you back for this, you know that, right? Surzex smirked, you'll try. I will. Naruto held his blank stare for an uncomfortable long while before he let out another sigh. Anyways, don't you have anything better to do than to ruin my morning? As a matter of fact, Surzex feigned to think, no I don't. Alright. Naruto nodded, you have 5 seconds to get out of here or what, little brother? Surzex prodded with a smirk, stretching his lips, are you going to throw me out? No, I'm just going to call for mother and Fina. Naruto started with a small, serene smile on his face. You wouldn't. Why not? Naruto asked, lightly caressing the arms of his sister that were wrapped around his torso. It's not like I've done anything wrong in this situation, so why shouldn't I call them? That's low, brother, even for you. So is taking pictures of Rias and me without our consent. Naruto fired back. I'm disappointed in the man that you are becoming, Naruto, Surzex stated while shaking his head. Heh, I could say the same about you, Lucy. Well, if that is the case, then I will remove myself. After all, I understand when I'm no longer wanted. Surzex harumphed and straightened himself out. Thank God, Naruto winced, worth it. Surzex then promptly left the young children's bedchambers, leaving behind an exhausted prepubescent Naruto and his still sleeping sister. Just woke up and already feel like going to sleep again, that's my life now, the boy shook his head with a rueful smile on his face, and I wouldn't have it any other way. 7 years have passed now since he had his little conversation with whatever kami it was that had sent him here. 7 uneventful, amazing years, and quite frankly those years were utter bliss to the once shinobi. If it weren't for the fact that he was a devil, then he would have believed that this was his heaven. And if he ever met Kami again, then he promised himself that he would kiss her feet, even if doing so would leave him on death's doorstep. Yes, his life was that good, and for the first time in forever, he had absolutely nothing he could complain about. His childhood was one of splendor and luxuries, but contrary to popular belief, it wasn't because his family was rich. Sure, it was nice to not have to worry anymore, but he didn't care about the money, the jewels, the titles, or the maids and butlers. No, his life was a blessed and luxurious one because of his family. It was utter bliss because he had people to care for, and who cared for him in turn. He had a family, and that was truly all that he ever wanted. The stirring and mumbling of his sweet little sister brought the boy back to reality, and he smiled before readjusting Rias in a way that made her lie within her brother's arms. The boy threaded a hand through his sister's crimson mane of hair, and his smile grew even further when he noticed her eyes flutter. Good morning, Rias-chan. He muttered quietly, did you sleep well? The girl hummed lightly, twisting and writhing in Naruto's arms, mornin'. The devilish boy chuckled before pulling the sleepy girl closer, rubbing soothing circles on her back. Of all the good that came with his new life, this girl right here had to be the most precious of them all. She was his clingy, adorable little sister, and she was his most precious person in the world. He'd do anything for her, literally anything. Loving Rias came as easy to him as breathing, and already he couldn't imagine life without her being in it. Quite honestly, Naruto never truly understood why he felt so strongly towards her. Maybe it was because he knew what it was like to be alone, or maybe what they say about twins was true and there was a special bond between them, but he didn't care. He knew that he loved her, and that was all that truly mattered to him anyways. But above and beyond he promised himself one thing, and that was to protect this lovely little devil no matter the cost. And that he would spoil her rotten as any good older brother would, but that was beside the point. As the girl lay comfortable within her brother's warm hold, it didn't take long for her to drift off into slumber once again, something that made the boy chuckle. He lightly shook the girl. "Come on, Rias-chan, time to wake up." 5 more minutes," the little minx mumbled sleepily. "Nope," Naruto whispered. "If I let you sleep any longer then you're just gonna get tired again, so come on, up you go." With that said, the shinobi reborn began to lightly tickle Rias' sides with a wicked grin on his face. The girl squirmed and writhed under her brother's relentless ministrations, and before too long she began to giggle and fight back. Stop it, Naruto!" Rias laughed even as she tried to grab a hold of the boy's arms. I'm up. I'm not too sure about that," Naruto laughed as he continued to tickle the hapless redhead beneath him. But little Rias was nothing if not feisty, and soon Naruto found himself being tickled by his little sister in turn. And so instead of standing up and getting themselves ready for the day to come, the two children stayed in bed far longer than they should have, playing with each other and having a fun time. But alas, everything good had to come to an end, and the twins' fun ended when they could hear their chamber doors being pushed open, followed by the sound of heels hitting marble. The two of them looked up as one and took note of their family's head of household standing before them with a small, displeased scowl marring her otherworldly features. To Naruto's eyes, Graphia Lucifuge, the wife of his older brother, and his family's most loyal servant, was a gorgeous woman with the uncanny ability to put the fear of the devil into him. An ability that Graphia shared with his mother, Venelana Gremory. But don't get him wrong, he may fear those two women when they were in a bad mood, but he wasn't afraid of them. Not one bit. "Young master and young lady, you're late for breakfast," Graphia spoke as she always did, with clarity and respect, but there was an underlying demand in her tone of voice to better do as she asked. Naruto and Rias knew that better than most, considering that it was mostly Graphia that caught them after the twins pulled one of their many pranks. And in the rare cases that they escaped the clutches of their family's majordomo, then their mother would find them even quicker. "Sorry Fina, I got carried away," Naruto said with an apologetic smile on his youthful face. "It wasn't Oni-chan's fault," Rias quickly added, squirming around on the bed until she managed to get the sheets off her and was sitting next to her brother. "We just played around and lost track of time." The maid scrutinized the two children before she let out a sigh, though Naruto did notice the small smile on the woman's lips. "You two are incorrigible," Graphia huffed when the twins grinned at her. "Now then, you've had your fun and it's time to get yourselves ready. Your parents and Lord Lucifer are waiting, so you best be quick about it." Naruto and Rias decided to heed the woman's words and scrambled off into the bathroom after giving the maid a quick nod and wave. Said maid was now left standing there within the lavish room of the twins. She looked around and her eyebrow began to twitch upon seeing the mess that was in the room. The bed was a right-on mess, and the twins' clothes from the last day were strewn about everywhere. Rias-sama's plush toys, which were usually stacked neatly on shelves, or the bedware everywhere, and don't even get her started on all the other toys that lay around the floor. The maid sighed and massaged her temples before taking another look around the room. "Brats," Graphia muttered before a small smile bloomed on her lips as she began to clean up the mess her young lord and lady had created. While annoying and more than just a little frustrating to deal with, the twins most certainly made sure that every single day was exciting in some manner. And Graphia couldn't remember the last time that the castle was filled with so much life. A few minutes later saw the twins hurrying down the halls towards the castle's family room. Naruto and Rias had cleaned up nicely, with the boy wearing black shoes and trousers, a deep red dress shirt, and a simple black vest over it. Rias was dressed in a light gown that matched Naruto's shirt in color, and black ballerinas, as she wasn't allowed to wear heeled shoes yet. And in Naruto's humble opinion, Rias looked cute as a button in her fancy getup. Alas, the boy wasn't in any mood to show his appreciation openly. No, he frowned and grumbled as he tried to readjust the collar of his shirt. If there was one thing that Naruto disliked about his second chance, then the fancy clothes had to be it. It wasn't that he necessarily hated them, but he could do without having to dress up for everything, even something as small and inconsequential as breakfast with his family. He didn't understand why he couldn't just go and have breakfast with his mom and dad in a simple t-shirt, slacks, and sneakers. Naruto grunted in pain as Rias elbowed him in the side. He looked at her and faltered. "Stop playing with your collar." Rias glared at Naruto. "You're gonna stretch it out or tear of a button at the rate you're fumbling with it." "Stop." For a moment the boy did as his sister demanded and came to a halt. The girl walked in front of Naruto and adjusted the collar of his shirt, smoothing out the wrinkles and even going as far as to open the first and second buttons. "You aren't wearing a tie, so there is no need to close the shirt all the way." "Thanks." Naruto smiled at Rias and lifted his hand to pat her head, but a smoldering glare from the little red-haired devil stopped him from doing so. The girl huffed and nodded in satisfaction when Naruto lowered his hand again. Right, Naruto wouldn't make that mistake again. Girls didn't appreciate it when someone messed up their hairdo. Who knew? The last time that Naruto did just that to Rias, she didn't talk to him for 3 whole days. Talk about being overdramatic. Naruto shook his head and walked after Rias, who just left him standing there after she finished adjusting his clothes. He began a light jog until he was level with his sister, and then the 2 young devils walked in silence until they arrived at their destination. The 2 guards that were posted on either side of the large wooden doors to the family room saluted the twins before quickly pushing open the doors. Naruto and Rias walked into the room where they were greeted by their parents and their older brother, who were already seated at a large and lavishly decorated table. At the head of the table sat their older brother, Sirzex Lucifer, who was the current leader of the underworld, their king. Sirzex was a handsome man that looked to be in his mid to late 20s. He had shoulder-length, smooth crimson hair that fanned his face and crossed down his forehead and nose in a messy fringe. His features were soft and quite effeminate, with flawless and pale skin, twinkling turquoise eyes, and a gentle look upon his face. Yet despite his gentle demeanor, Sirzex held himself with an air of confidence, and his very presence gave off an air of power that would set anyone on edge. Naruto was quite certain that Sirzex's gentle and soft behavior was a well-thought-out act that his brother kept up solely to ease the people around him. To Sirzex's right sat their father, Xiaticus Gremry, the head of their house. Xiaticus looked like Sirzex with a goatee and longer hair. The only other difference between the two of them was that Xiaticus's hair was a shade brighter than that of Sirzex. And finally, there was the last person that sat at the table, on Sirzex's left. She was quite possibly the most beautiful woman that Naruto had ever laid eyes on, more so than even Kami-sama herself. And next to Rias, this was someone that Naruto quickly came to love. Sure, Naruto loved his father and his older brother and Fina, but the love he felt for this woman was something else entirely. After all, this woman was the one that gave birth to him. Hers was the first face he had seen in this world, and from the moment his eyes met hers for the first time, he knew that this woman loved him unconditionally. And that was something that Naruto would return in full. His mother, Vanillana Gremry, had given him something that he had always desired, that he had always wanted, something that he needed. She had given him the kind of love that only a mother could give, something that he never had as Uzumaki Naruto. And it was her love that made his second chance at life so easy to accept. Whenever Naruto wanted to mourn the life that he could have had in the elemental nations, his mother was right there to soothe him. He never told her the truth, he couldn't, and he didn't need to, because it was as if she always knew when he was feeling down, and she always knew what to do or say to make him feel better. She was amazing that way, and sometimes he couldn't help but wonder if the mother of Uzumaki Naruto was anything like his mother was. "It's nice of you to finally show up, my little sweetlings." It was then that Vanillana decided to speak up when she noticed her son's eyes glaze over in melancholy like they sometimes did. Rias stepped forward and gave their mother a small bow of her head. "We are sorry for being tardy, mother, please forgive us." Naruto snapped out of his brief episode and nodded his agreement. "Yes, we are sorry for making you wait, Mom." He glared at his sister, who glared right back after elbowing him in the side again. "Mother." The mature beauty lifted her hand to her mouth to hide the smile on her lips, whereas Sirzex and Xiaticus weren't so tactful and snorted their amusement at the scene before them, which earned them both the stink eye of Naruto's. "All is forgiven," Vanillana said with amusement lacing her words. "Please have a seat, I'm sure you are ready for breakfast after the exciting morning that you've had." Both Naruto and Rias nodded their heads quickly and scrambled over to their seats, with Naruto being seated to the right of their father, and Rias sitting opposite of him, to the right of their mother. Once the two were seated, their father clapped his hands and immediately swarms of servants brought forth a feast that the small family of 5 would never be able to finish. Freshly baked bread, an assortment of fruits, meats, and cheeses, eggs cooked any which way, creams, jams, and marmalades for toppings, and a large variety of drinks and juices to go along with their food. Truly, it never failed to rob Naruto of his appetite. He didn't care that the food was tasty, that it was prepared by professionals and cooked to utter perfection. It just didn't feel right, and he hated to indulge himself in unnecessary luxuries. And the waste it was disheartening. As Uzumaki Naruto, he had to scour through backstreets and trash bins just so he wouldn't starve, and now, he was presented with so much food that he didn't even know where to put it all. Most of it would be thrown away at the end of the day, and those wastes could have fed his former self for a year or more. It was quite depressing. "Is everything all right, son?" His father lightly nudged him. "You can order something else if nothing here strikes your fancy." "Oh, no, it's fine. Turns out I'm just not that hungry at all." The boy lightly scratched his cheek and averted his eyes from the searching ones of his father. Venelana noticed, and her gorgeous violet eyes narrowed in suspicion. Zyataka shrugged. "All right then, suit yourself, but have at least something to drink. You and your sister have a full day ahead of you and you'll need the energy." "Sure, Dad." Naruto smiled and grabbed himself a glass of juice before his eyes caught those of his mother. He gulped slightly at her stern look and noticed how she used her eyes to gesture at the food. The message was clear. With a small sigh of defeat, the boy reached for a still steaming bread roll, some butter, and a glass of jam. He would never be able to win against that woman, and he didn't even need to look at his little sister to know that the little devil was giving him a victorious smirk. He sighed once more before joining his family in eating breakfast, and not long after that he too was smiling, laughing, and talking merrily with the group of devils that managed to capture and ensnare his heart. "Kami-sama, if you can hear me, thank you for giving me a family." The boy laughed loudly as his father told them all about how Surzex managed to embarrass himself in front of a group of nobles as a kid. "Thank you so much." Naruto fidgeted under his mother's scrutinizing gaze. The family of devils had just finished their breakfast, and when they were leaving, Venelana had pulled Naruto aside to have a little talk with her precious boy. And the boy was feeling quite a bit of unease at this situation. Venelana looked her boy over, scrutinizing him from top to bottom, making Naruto squirm under her gaze until she finally decided to speak up. "Naruto, what's wrong?" she asked, which garnered her a blinking stare from her son. What?" the boy asked in confusion. "You didn't want to eat earlier, and before that, you got that look in your eyes again, so tell me, baby, what's going through your little head again?" The mother prodded while gently combing a hand through Naruto's spiky red hair. "Oh, it's nothing, I just wasn't feeling hungry is all," the boy muttered with a small smile on his face, one that his mother could tell immediately was fake. "Please don't lie to me, Naruto," Venelana muttered sternly. "Don't think that I haven't noticed that you dislike lavish feasts, so is that it?" How?" the boy wondered with wide eyes. His mother truly could see right through him. He wondered how she did that. "You're my son, and I'd like to say that I know you better than anyone else. I noticed that you don't like to overindulge. No, you don't like to indulge at all. I've noticed that whenever we share a meal, you get all quiet and reclusive, and then your eyes gloss over in melancholy. So tell me, my son, what's troubling you so much?" "It's nothing, Mom," the boy muttered and looked away, or at least tried to, before he felt a soft hand grab a hold of his chin, and his head was turned to once more look at the face of his mother. Seeing the concern in her violet eyes was gut-wrenching. "Come, Naruto, how can I help you if you are not going to tell me what is troubling you?" The woman knelt in front of her son and held him by the shoulders. "Won't you tell me, pretty please?" Oh, good God, Naruto finally realized where Rias got her persuasive nature from and her begging face, complete with fluttering eyelashes and all. Naruto never could stand up to that look on the face of his little sister. And funnily enough, he quickly came to realize that his mom could make that look work just as well. And once again, Naruto never stood a chance against that look. He sighed and decided to simply spill his guts once again. He truly wished that he could be completely truthful to his mom. He hated to lie to her, but he couldn't. He couldn't tell her about his life as Uzumaki Naruto, and that was not a metaphor. He physically couldn't. Whenever he tried to talk about his past life, it was as if an invisible force sealed his mouth shut, and as far as he knew, there was no way to go around it, and believe him if he said that he had tried many times. But back to the problem at hand, the boy sighed and nodded at his mother. "All right, Mom, well, I don't know how to describe it, but I guess that allowing myself to indulge in any luxuries makes me feel guilty." Venelana didn't look surprised by her son's admission at all, as quite frankly she had long since guessed that to be the case. But she needed to get her boy to be willing to talk to her on his own, which was why she never tried to truly pressure him on the matter. But now, finally, she could help her darling boy and maybe get to the bottom of her son's troubles. And why would you feel guilty for enjoying something as simple as food? Breakfast is not truly a luxury, you know? The mother prodded further. Naruto nodded. Normal breakfast isn't, but our breakfast? If that isn't an overindulgence, then I don't know what is. Our daily meals are so lavish and grand, it's silly. I'd be happy with some cereals and a cup of tea, maybe some scrambled eggs, but what we get served could feed a gathering of 500 and there would still be leftovers. And that's what makes me feel guilty, that we waste so much good food. I see. The flaxen-haired woman muttered, but why would you think that food gets tossed away? Naruto blinked owlishly at his mother. Wait, we don't throw away the leftovers? Then Alana chuckled, of course not, silly. She patted her son's head and ruffled his hair. Throwing away so much usable food would be ludicrous. Running a household as large as ours is very much like running a business, and throwing away things that are still good and could be reused is always a bad economic decision. It would be like throwing away money. Then Alana took a breath and allowed her words to sink in before continuing. Naruto, we have over 1,000 servants on duty at any given time. Many of our servants live on Gremory grounds, as do their families, and we as their employers provide for them. We offer them living arrangements, support for their families. We provide them with the necessities they need to live comfortably. We give them a monthly salary and of course we provide them with food. So our leftovers are given to the cooks, the maids, the butlers, and the guards. Then Alana finished for her son. Every single being that works for us is provided with at least 3 warm meals a day, and they eat the same meals as us. So even though we go through tons of foodstuffs every day, not much of that is wasted at all. And even that little bit that is left over gets reused and turned into food for our animals. The meats are given to the guard dogs, and the carnivores in our zoo, and the vegetables are fed to our horses. Your father doesn't like to be wasteful, and he has a habit of turning each dime at least thrice before spending it. That is how our family came to enjoy such wealth. So basically I was being an idiot, Naruto muttered with head hung low and a small comedic rain cloud hanging above his frame. He felt like hitting himself. He knew that his family was richer than just rich, and he immediately jumped to conclusions, liking his new family to the nobles of Konoha and the elemental nations. And to make things worse still, he never even thought about going to his father and asking him about how they handled such things. Great. Now he wasn't feeling bad about the splendor his family enjoyed. No, now he felt bad for jumping to conclusions just because he had bad memories of nobles from his past life. Yes, a little bit maybe, Alana said before sweat dropping when she noticed her son's form slump even further into himself. She quickly yet gently raised his chin and placed a soft kiss onto his forehead. But there is no need to feel bad about it, okay? There is nothing wrong with having a caring heart, and your compassion is something that you should be proud of. I most certainly am. Naruto nodded and lowered his head to hide his red cheeks from his mom. Not that he could, as hearing her light laughter was all he needed to tell that she already noticed his blushing face. He felt her ruffle his hair again, and his face turned even redder if that was possible. Damn it, he wasn't good with compliments when he was still Uzumaki Naruto, but now that the compliments came directly from his mom it was so much worse while also being so much better. But Naruto, promise something, alright? The boy looked up and saw that his mother's face had become very serious, so he opted to just nod. Promise me to keep your heart close and that you show your kindness and compassion only to those that are deserving of it. Naruto blinked at his mom, but why would I do that? In his past life, he had always relied on his heart, and doing so had brought him much success. He turned his enemies into friends, and his heart had touched many in his time as a shinobi. But in the end, it also got him killed at the hands of his best friend, so maybe, just maybe, he should hear his mother out on this. Because, baby, a kind heart is something to be treasured, something to be protected. It is something to be proud of, and your compassion will ensure that you'll become a great lord once you succeed your father. But never forget that we are devils. We live in a society that is ruled and dominated by greed and lust, and if you aren't careful then the other devils will abuse your kindness without question. You will have to temper your kindness and you will have to sharpen your mind. As a young lord of noble birth, you will have to learn when it is appropriate to show your kindness and when to put up a facade. Naruto had a thoughtful look on his face as he took in his mom's explanation, and yes, he understood where she was coming from. While Rias and he grew up sheltered, he did overhear their servants talk, and he may have overheard his older brother and father on a few occasions. He had gathered enough to realize the situation he found himself in. He knew that he was a noble son now, and he knew that his father was the lord and protector of several millions of beings that lived in the cities and towns that belonged to House Gremory. And he overheard enough to know that many devils weren't kind, or just or selfless. So, he had to admit, albeit begrudgingly, that his mom had a point. "I'll try, Mom," the boy said, which earned him another kiss to his forehead and a bright smile from the woman kneeling in front of him. "I suppose that is the best I'm going to get out of you." Vanillana shook her head with a smile. "I should probably give your father a tongue lashing for daring to pass on his bullheadedness to both Rias and you." Naruto laughed and leaned forwards to embrace his mom in a tight hug, burying his head in between the soft flesh on her chest. "If you're going to do that to Dad, then please tell me so that I can be there with a camera to record it." Vanillana snorted out quite an unladylike sound, something that she wouldn't be caught dead doing in public. She hugged her son back and buried her laughter in his hair. "You mischievous little devil, you." "Hey, you know me." The mother and son separated from their hug. "Thanks for everything, Mom, I needed that." "I know." Vanillana smiled. "But now you better get going, otherwise your little sister will get restless, and I don't think any of us want to deal with that today." Naruto felt a bead of sweat go down his forehead at that. "No, we don't." Everyone thought that Naruto was bad. Well, they should wait until they found out what a bored or angry Rias was capable of. Now that was truly a nightmare to deal with. Maybe I shouldn't have instructed Rias-chan in the sacred arts of pranking while mistakes have been made. You know that I'll always hold you responsible for the pranks that Rias will pull in the future, right? Vanillana gave her son a look that made the boy laugh awkwardly. "Yeah, I think I deserve that." Naruto scratched the back of his head. "But how was I to know that she would develop a mean streak that eclipses even my own?" Vanillana gave Naruto a flat look. "Because she's your twin and she's following in your footsteps like a puppy." "Yeah, maybe I should have seen it coming." "Yes, I think we can agree on that, but I think that I've kept you long enough now, and if I'm not mistaken your teacher will arrive soon," the beautiful mother of three stated and smirked internally when she saw her little boy's shoulders drop. "What?" Rias and Naruto had to get their mischievous nature from somewhere. "And I'm so looking forward to that," the boy bit back a groan. Now, none of that sass." Vanillana wagged a finger at Naruto. "You're going to be the lord of this house one day. As such you need to be well versed in all things concerning the underworld and our society. And haven't I just told you that you need to sharpen your mind if you wish to contend with the other lords in the game of politics?" Naruto sighed and nodded his head. "I understand, Mom, and I'll try my best." The woman nodded, smiled, and kissed Naruto's forehead once more. "I know you will, now get going." The redhead nodded, turned around, and scurried off to find his little sister, leaving behind a smiling and quite frankly proud mother. "You and your sister will achieve great things, of that I have absolutely no doubt," she thought fondly before standing up and straightening out her dress. Her children weren't the only ones with a busy schedule, and the matriarch of the Gremory family believed that she had been tardy enough for one day. With that in mind, the woman headed off towards her office. She had plans to make and plots to spin. After all, staying ahead in the game of politics was not an easy task. But then again, Vanillana Gremory was one of the best players on the board. About half an hour earlier, Rias Gremory sat in the large, lavish, and quite beautiful gardens around which her father's castle was built. She was seated on a bench beneath a large and wide wisteria tree. A curious tree in Rias' humble opinion. Instead of growing upwards as many other trees would, this little wonder of nature liked to move outward, offering ample shade beneath their boughs draped in flowers. These flowery trees were kept being always in bloom. How her mother managed that, Rias didn't understand, but she would never be able to argue with the results, as the bright purple blooms of the wisteria trees gave their garden a magnificent royal sensibility. But the soothing nature of the garden did little to lift the girl's mood. She was feeling quite grumpy right now, which was evident by the huffy pout on her lips. Both Naruto and her mother knew that she hated being kept in the dark, so she was feeling a bit left out when her mother had taken her brother aside to have some secret conversation with him. "It so wasn't fair." "Mimi," she grumbled and crossed her arms as any annoyed kid would. She had half a mind to eavesdrop on her mother and Naruto, but she knew that they would spot her immediately. Both her mom and her brother had the special and very annoying talent of always knowing where Rias was. She loved her twin, but she also wanted to be able to sneak up on him, to either give him a surprise hug if he had been good, or to prank him if he was being an idiot. And his uncanny ability made that difficult. But maybe she shouldn't complain. After all, she too always kind of just knew where Naruto was. It was something that the girl couldn't describe, like a weird feeling in her gut, or something in the back of her mind, and that thing always led her to Naruto. She didn't even need to do anything. She just walked and then her legs would carry her to him without fail. It was weird, but a good kind of weird. A soothing king of weird that made her feel like she was never alone. She quite liked it, even if it was annoying at times. The little princess huffed again and leaned back on the bench, looking up at the purple blooming flowers above. What's taking them so long? She wondered even as her curiosity kept gnawing at her. I really want to know what they are talking about. Maybe Mother is talking with Naruto about his weird behavior? The girl thought while tilting her head. Well, if that was the case, then it was a good thing, right? But still, Rias wanted to be there. She too wanted to know why Naruto sometimes tended to space out with a look in his eyes that made Rias want to comfort him. That was something that Rias knew Naruto did a lot during their earlier years, so much so that her brother was always quiet and soft-spoken, but he had gotten better with that over the last year or two. Still, she noticed that from time to time Naruto would space out and get lost in his thoughts, but she also knew how to get him to snap out of it pretty quickly. There was nothing in this world that cuddles and hugs wouldn't be able to fix. The restless and bored girl kicked her feet back and forth, and then she began to wonder what she could do to pass some time until her mother and brother were finished being ninis. And then an idea hit her like a bolt of lightning. The little girl grinned, and her eyes twinkled in mischief. I wonder where Oniai-sama is right now. Surzex could feel his hand begin to cramp up from doing nothing but paperwork for the past hour or so. Oh, how he hated his job sometimes. Can't something interesting happen for once? The Satan Lucifer whined childishly in his mind before he felt a cold shudder going up and down his spine. I have just jinxed myself, haven't I? Ah, crap baskets. Present. Naruto walked down the halls, letting his feet carry him to where he instinctually knew Rias to be. Though the boy grew confused when he realized that he was heading in the direction of Surzex and Fina's wing of the castle. What's Rias-chan doing here? Well, guess I'll find out soon enough. He continued his walk, greeting the servants and guards that he passed on his way until finally he spotted his dear sister standing outside of their older brother's office. Briefly, Naruto wondered why she was just standing there, as he kinda believed that she would be inside, getting herself some spoiling from the Dark Lord himself. But when Rias turned to face him with a grin on her cute, chubby face, alarm bells went off inside Naruto's mind and his entire body went tense. And when Rias blew a raspberry and pulled down her eyelid at him, Naruto knew that he'd done goofed. Rias began to run in the opposite direction down the hall, and Naruto knew that he too should run like all hell, but like watching a train wreck happening, his body refused to move. When he saw Rias's small frame disappear around a corner, it happened. Bang! The sound of an explosion could be heard coming from within the walls of Surzek's office, which was quickly followed by a string of curses. Rias, what did you do? Naruto wasn't even given the time to ponder on what the hell just happened before the doors of Surzek's office practically came flying off of their hinges, and out stepped the Satan Lucifer himself, covered from head to toe in neon pink paint and draped in a curtain of rainbow-colored glitter. You! Naruto blinked owlishly at his furious brother even as his mind still tried to make sense of the situation. Rias-chan, she pranked me. Realization dawned on Naruto, and not a moment too soon, because he could suddenly feel the air become thick with Surzek's demonic energy. Naruto! Oh shit! Rias once more sat outside in their garden, giggling merrily to herself as her ears listened to the commotion coming from inside the castle. Rias-chan, the little girl's head snapped aside, and she saw her mother standing there, giving her a displeased frown. Was that really necessary? The girl crossed her arms and huffed. That's what Oniai-chan gets for being mean to me. Then Alana frowned, and Surzex? What did he do wrong to annoy you? Rias pouted at her mother. Naruto-kun told me that Oniai-sama took pictures of us while we were asleep this morning. He did what? A vein throbbed on Venelana's forehead, and she reached up to rub her temples and soothe the migraine she could feel coming. Well, guess that I'll have to have a conversation about what's proper with Surzex once again. The matriarch of the Gremory family walked away from Rias, muttering something under her breath that the little girl couldn't quite catch. Not that it mattered anyway, because as soon as her mother had turned her back on the little devil, the girl's pout faded, and a shit-eating grin took its place on her lips. There was nothing quite like a good prank coming together, and all pieces falling into place. Oh, and Rias? The girl heard her mother's voice, and the icy tone made the girl go pale. Don't think for even 1 second that I will forget about this. After I've talked some sense into Surzex, you and I will have a conversation as well, understood? Rias gulped and quickly bobbed her head in agreement even as a bead of sweat went down the girl's temple. When her mother was out of view, Rias slumped in on herself before letting out a gorin. I may have made a mistake. Oh crap, baskets. Rias laughed awkwardly under her brother's miffed stare. She eyed the taller boy, and upon seeing the many bumps and bruises on him, she couldn't help but wince. Yep, her dear brother was angry with her. And going by the way he had crossed his arms and was tapping his foot, he was waiting for something. So, doing the smart thing, Rias put on her best begging face and puppy eyes before whimpering out, "I'm sorry, Oniai-chan." She heard her brother sigh and then smiled when she felt his hand on top of her head. "Guess I shouldn't have kept you waiting." He spoke at last. Rias giggled and shook her head. "No, you shouldn't have. Besides, you are the one that taught me how to do pranks, so you can't be mad at me, okay?" "I guess that's true enough," Naruto laughed. "Just don't make a habit out of it, alright? Otherwise, I'll have to fight back." When Naruto poked her ticklish sides, the girl squealed in surprise. Okay, I promise." "That's my girl." Naruto ruffled Ria's hair again. "But tell me, how did you manage to plant charges filled with paint and glitter in Surzek's office?" The girl smiled impishly at her brother. "Well, it's like you told me, a good prank needs some time to be prepared. I planted the paint bombs a few weeks ago and just waited for the right time to use them." Naruto wiped away a fake tear. "Oh sister dearest, you make me so proud." The smaller girl gave the boy a playful curtsy. "I aim to please." "Well, you've outdone yourself with this one. You really should have seen the look on Oniai-chan's face." Naruto laughed, which caused the little red-headed minx to quickly join in. "Oh, I wish that I could have seen it." The girl giggled. "Or better yet, I wish that I could have taken some pictures. The next time we pull a prank on Surzek, we need to hide a camera somewhere." Naruto nodded. A good prank needed a memento to remember it by. "Honestly, young master, I would say that Lord Lucifer would very much appreciate it if you kept your fun at his expense to a minimum." Both Naruto and Rias looked at the door before standing up from their seats and bowing at the woman that came walking into the room. The twins currently occupied the house's main study, where they were waiting for their teacher to arrive. And just like so many other things in their castle, the main study could only be described as overly extravagant and downright fancy. Shelves made of mahogany would line the walls, all filled to the brim with the only first edition and first print books on various subjects, both magical and mundane, some written in lost languages and others written in common and modern English. Other than the bookshelves, the study was largely left empty. Only a few desks, drawers, seats, and couches dotted the large hall, and the decorations were kept rather tame in comparison to some other rooms. But sometimes keeping something simple and minimalistic worked wonders, as while the lavish decorations were few, the expensive paintings and gilded plate armors were quite eye-catching. But, at last, Naruto turned his attention to the woman that had just entered the study, and was now calmly preparing the things she need to teach them today. She was a beautiful woman, and stood quite a bit taller than even most men, and the gentle look she had upon her face belied the power that Naruto could feel oozing off her frame. Her hair was a rich shade of ebony. It flowed in waves down her back to adorn her porcelain-like skin, and reached down to her wide hips and a perky behind. Her eyes, framed by long lashes, were a warm reddish-brown and seemed to be alight with the knowledge to surpass many scholars, and the woman held herself with an air of confidence. As she should. After all, this was quite the fearsome woman, and she had carved her name into history using the blood of her enemies. Artemisia I of Korea, the ancient Greek queen of Halicarnassus, who ruled during the late 5th century BC, and now served the twins' father as his knight. Described in history books as a ruthless, cruel, and cunning strategist, but to Naruto and Rias, she had been nothing but kind, helpful, and forthcoming. One of their family's most loyal servants, so much so that Xeoticus and Venelana had entrusted her with the honor of being the children's tutor and guard, a task that Artemisia shared only with Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. "Alright children, let's begin with the lesson, shall we?" Artemisia spoke warmly to the twins, who both nodded and sat down in front of her. "But before we begin with today's lessons, let's go over the assignments I've handed you yesterday." Both twins stared blankly at the warrior queen before them, and then suddenly their eyes went wide in panic. They gulped and looked at each other, only one thing going through their minds. "Wait, we had homework." They looked back at Artemisia and began to chuckle awkwardly, which caused their teacher to let out a sigh while rubbing the bridge of her nose. Venelana was sitting within the confines of her office, located on the bottom floor of the castle. She had her head bowed over her extravagant desk made from the wood of the purple heart, or amaranth. It fit aesthetically with the soft violets and reds that were the thematic color scheme of her office. The matriarch of the Gremry family had her head bowed over some papers, her eyes flowing over each line of print with a seasoned practice that stemmed from years upon years of leadership. And yet, while she went over these forms, requests, and reports, the woman's mind was someplace different. Mentally, Venelana mulled over the recent political climate amongst the remaining pillar houses of the underworld. She thought about the moves that the other lords and ladies had made recently and pondered on the implications those moves could have on House Gremory. And Venelana couldn't help but feel a twinge of worry in the back of her mind. Now their house was not in any immediate danger, and their political position was ironclad. Nothing short of a complete upheaval of the underworld's government would change that either. But it was that which had her worried. House Gremory was powerful, and it was much beloved by the lower classes, wherein lay the problem. Venelana feared that many lords and ladies of houses that weren't as well off as her own were getting quite upset. She heard rumors that several lords and ladies believed that the Gremory family was becoming too powerful too quickly. And rumors like that had only increased after she had given birth to Naruto and Rias. Which was to be expected. The races of the supernatural world were generally very infertile. It was hard for a female devil to get pregnant, and it usually took years upon years of regular and frequent intercourse to finally become with child. As such, it came as no surprise that twins being born to any supernatural race was uncommon, if not unheard of. And as far as Venelana knew, her babies could very well be the first twins in the entire history of their race. She heard tell that the common folk likened the birth of her babies to a miracle, and while she would never disagree with that notion, it had her worried. When she told her son that their race was ruled by the 7 deadly sins, she was not lying, and she knew that many of her fellow nobles were eyeing House Gremory with various degrees of envy, gluttony, wrath, and lust. Many wanted what her family had. But then again, that was nothing new to her. She had been dealing with the envy and lust of noble devils for her entire life now, and to this very day, none had ever managed to get more from her than she was willing to give. After all, Venelana Gremory didn't gain the monikers Mistress of Annihilation and Princess of Ruin just because she was a Baal with access to the power of destruction. No, she went over corpses to acquire those titles. And if any of her fellow nobles directed their sinful gazes at her precious children, Venelana was very willing and very able to add more corpses onto the pile. "Oh, hello, father, what can I do for you?" Surzex looked up from his desk and gave his attention to his father, who had just walked into his office. Well, his spare office that he was forced to use until his main one was cleaned from its new paint job. The Lord of House Gremory walked up to Surzek's desk before sitting down and making himself comfortable in one of the seats. "I require your counsel, Surzex." Surzex looked at his father and was quick to note the signs of stress that were visible on the man's face. "Very well, and on what would you need my input?" "You may already have noticed this, but the other houses are getting quite concerned about the recent success of House Gremory," the Lord explained before letting out a sigh, and many lords and ladies wished to finally be able to meet Naruto and Rias. "I see," Surzex mulled on what he was told before nodding to himself. "What the other houses are asking is not truly unreasonable. You and Mother have been hiding the twins from the world." Zeoticus chuckled. "Of course we did. I have no desire to parade my children around just to pacify a few worried lords." "And that way of thinking just served in making those worried lords worry even more," Surzex said. Zeoticus slumped in his chair. "Now there is no need to rub it in." "But I'm not." Surzex smiled at his father. "Believe me, as their older brother I would have done the same, but as Lucifer," Surzex sighed before he became serious, "you understand just how much those two mean to us devils, do you not? Just their birth alone was a boost to the morale of our people." "So, what you are saying is that I should prepare myself for an outing?" "No, father, what I'm saying is that with every day that passes in which you hide the twins, the other houses will become more and more restless, which may or may not turn into anger or fear. After all, you and Mother have yet to allow even your allies to meet the twins." "I'm aware of that," the head of House Gremory said in a hard tone, "just as I'm aware that the moment Rias and Naruto leave the confines of this castle all eyes will be on them, watching their every move and waiting for the smallest of mistakes so that they can all fall upon them like the vultures that they are." Silence overtook the office after the Lord finished his bitter rant, and father and son were left staring at each other in a battle of wills. "You should know this better than most, my son," Zeoticus finally continued after several moments of silence, his tone of voice softer now as he gave his fully grown son a mournful look. "Thanks to some of the more radical nobles you never got to experience a childhood after all, and I do not wish for a repeat of that." Surzex let out a humorless laugh at that. "Father, times are different now. You cannot liken Naruto and Rias to me. When I was a child, the original Satan still ruled, and to them, we were never more than simple objects that they could use for their amusement. Besides, while my childhood may have been a bitter one, I have very few regrets, and I never felt like blaming either my mother or you for all that I have suffered as a child. So please, father, trust me when I say that the world is different now. I won't go as far as to promise that Rias and Naruto will have it easy, but I will make sure that they will never face more than they can handle, that I can promise you. Xerxes looked his father into the eyes before continuing his speech. Besides, if you truly want to protect those two, then why don't you allow them to make allies of their own? Seraphal has a little sister who will one day be the matriarch of the city, and Naruto's fiancée is nearly his age as well. And there is also the little heiress of the Agar's clan who should be the same age as them. I'm not going to push you on anything, father, but I truly believe that the best way to guarantee Naruto and Rias' continued safety would be for them to make like-minded friends that would stand with them in the future. Zeodicus took his son's counsel to heart and nodded at him before rising from his seat. I will think about what you've told me, he said, and made to leave the office only to stop once he reached the door and looked back. And thank you for giving me your honest opinion on the matter. There's no need to thank me for anything, father. Still, it doesn't hurt, does it? And with those parting words, the Lord Gremory left his son to his own devices. Though he did leave with more things to think about than before, being a devilish lord was never a cakewalk, but he'd deal with it just as he always had. A few months later, Naruto smiled to himself as he watched his little sister play a game of chess against their new and first real friend, Sona, the heiress of the house Citri. Well, Naruto would like to call her a friend, that is. Truth was, they only met Sona today, barely an hour ago at that, but hey, the little bespectacled girl got along well with his sister, so Naruto felt confident in their chances to make a friend out of the little heiress. After all, what was not to like about Rias and him? But then again, this was as much Rias's moment as it was his own, and his darling little sister was seemingly far better at bonding with little Sona than he was. It was cute how Rias had managed to coax the shy and standoffish Sona out of her shell, to a point where the violet-eyed girl got competitive. And Rias had managed to do all of that by simply challenging Sona to a game of chess. And that's checkmate. A quick game of chess. Okay, looking at his moping little sister, Naruto had to question if Rias still wanted to be friends with Sona after that. Naruto wasn't into chess at all, and yet he still knew that Sona just tore his sister a new one, and she did so quite effortlessly. Suddenly Rias perked up and her back became ramrod straight. She glared at Sona with flushed red and puffed out cheeks before raising a hand and pointing a finger at the other girl. I will not stand for this. The little redhead cried out. That had to be a fluke. I demand a rematch right now. Sona seemed to shrink in on herself after Rias's little outburst, and Naruto was just about to intervene and play the mediator between his hot-headed sister and the shy, soft-spoken heiress, but he didn't have to do anything at all. Because Sona seemed to just bounce back from her shy nature and proceeded to nod at Rias with something in her eyes that Naruto could only describe as a competitive glint. And so, the two girls began a new game of chess, which didn't go well for his sister, either did the next one, or the one after that. And after Sona's fifth consecutive victory, Naruto was worried that Rias would blow a fuse. After all, the head of his little sister currently resembled a giant tomato with eyes. And that couldn't be a good thing. Alright, you two, why don't you take a break from chess for a while? Naruto stood from the couch that he sat on and walked up to the low table the two girls used to set up the board to play on. He ruffled the girl's hair, which earned him an adorable flush from Sona and a smile from Rias. But then Rias just had to remember that she was miffed right now and quickly shook her head before glaring at the blushing Sona. No, Oniai-chan, I won't give up until I won at least once against her. Spat the red-haired spitfire he called sister. I don't mind playing against your sister, and Naruto-sama, Sona muttered with a flushed face. Actually, it's quite a bit of fun. Oh, well, if that's the case, then don't let me stop you from enjoying yourselves, Naruto said while rubbing the back of his head awkwardly. Anyways, I think I'm going to go and get myself some refreshments. Would either of you care for some as well? Yes, please. Rias quickly chimed up. You know what I like. Yes please. Sona nodded. But why would you go yourself? Could you not call for a servant to bring us something? Naruto nodded. Of course I could, but I want to move my legs for a bit. Rias giggled. Oniai-chan doesn't like to sit around a lot, so he always comes up with excuses to stretch his legs and whatever. Sona nodded. I see, but I wanted to ask if I could play you as well, Naruto-sama. In chess, I mean. Naruto looked surprised for a moment but was quick to compose himself. I'd rather not. He gave the bespectacled girl an apologetic smile. I'm not at all fond of chess. I know how to play, but I don't care for the game. Sona looked down in disappointment, which did make Naruto feel bad in a way, but the boy figured that it would be best to be honest with Sona. He just really hoped that the girl didn't like the game enough to feel offended by his dislike of it. But it seemed that he did not need to worry as the girl nodded. You understand, chess is not for everyone, but with how important it is to us devils, are you certain that it's wise to disregard the game completely? Probably not, Naruto hummed with a shake of his head, but as my sister said, I find it hard to sit still and I lack the patience to enjoy chess. Rias drew Sona's attention by letting out another sweet laugh. That's what Naruto-kun likes to tell others, but it's far from the truth. Want to know why he doesn't play chess anymore? Sona nodded at the redhead and leaned closer towards her. Rias, Naruto muttered warningly with a twitching eyebrow, don't you dare. His sister Dearest gave him a wicked smile before looking back at the exited heiress of House Citri sitting across from her. When we were smaller, Oni-chan used to always challenge Oni-sama in chess, and then Oni-sama would make quick work of Oni-chan, and it happened so many times, and Surzix and I-sama is a bad winner and just kept on rubbing it in, so after a while, Oni-chan started to hate chess. Throughout the conversation, Naruto's eye twitch became more and more pronounced, and he was slowly and sneakily moving towards the unsuspecting Rias. By the time the little girl had finished her tale, the older boy by 1.5 minutes was standing right behind his sister. I thought that you promised me to never talk about that, sister Dearest. The boy's eyes were shadowed by his hair, and his entire frame was shrouded in darkness. Rias looked over her shoulder and paled. Oh yes, I forgot, yep, I forgot, so please forgive me, Oni-chan, okay? Oh, but Rias, it's far too late for that, and with that, the boy lunged forward. Kya! Rias jumped up just in time to avoid Naruto's clutches, and then the girl darted off like a bullet, leaving the barrel. And so, Sona found herself in the middle of two redheads that played an impromptu game of chase all around her. Her hands flew up to her mouth to cover the laughter that wished to spill forth from her lips. But it was no use when she witnessed Naruto finally catch his twin and then commence the torture known as tickling. Sona lost it and began to laugh heartedly. One thing was certain, this was the beginning of a wonderful friendship between those three children. Naruto Gremory panted hard and tried to steady himself and keep standing on his tired and weak legs. He glared ahead, staring at his opponent with cold eyes, and then he brought his weapon to bear. But he knew that it would be futile. In the end, he was outclassed. How could anyone expect a 10-year-old to stand up to a monster like this? But that didn't mean that Naruto wouldn't at least give it a try. After all, how many could claim to have fought against Lucifer? That's right, very few could say something like that. With his mind made up and with new resolve, Naruto pushed off the ground and shot towards his smirking enemy. In his mind, Naruto could see how the engagement would play out long before he truly reached his brother's unmoving form. Surzix would open the engagement with a lazy and telegraphed overhand swing. Naruto would redirect the blow with his practice sword, which would leave Surzix open for a few precious moments, and then Naruto would knee his brother right into his unholy crown jewels. That was the plan, and like most plans, it didn't survive the first contact with the enemy. Naruto was right in that Surzix opened with a lazy overhand swing, but that was it because when the young boy tried to redirect the blow from his brother, he realized that there was a bit too much power behind Surzix's lazy swing. So much so, that Surzix effortlessly broke Naruto's guard and the poor young heir received not one, but two wooden swords to the head. One was his own and the other belonged to an asshole, both hurt quite a bit though. Yow! Naruto hissed and stumbled back a few steps, his hands shooting up to cradle his sore cranium. Yep, that hurts. No, really? Surzix gasped in surprise. I always thought that getting hit in the head was supposed to feel nice. Ha ha ha, you're so very funny, Oni-chan, Naruto muttered while still rubbing the top of his head tenderly. Why thank you, Surzix bowed playfully, I try, I really do. Naruto's eyebrow twitched and he had to take a deep and calming breath to rein in his temper. Be the bigger man, Naruto, be the bigger man. But anyway, while this has been fun, and believe me it truly has, are you done? Surzix asked while leisurely swinging around the wooden replica of a Western-styled sword in his hand. Because I have better things to do than to beat up my little brother. Naruto growled, No, I'm not done, damn it. The boy picked up his wooden sword and went into a basic dueling stance that his father had taught him. Now get ready because I won't stop until I've at least managed to hit you once. Surzix sighed, Okay, what's this all about, Naruto? As far as I remember I haven't done anything to garner your anger lately. So why are you so adamant in fighting me? Because no one else will. Naruto shouted before once more speeding at his big brother as fast as his legs would carry him. Surzix's eyes widened at Naruto's admission, and he now knew why his brother wanted to fight him so badly. A small, rueful smile bloomed on Surzix's handsome face before the man too took on a dueling stance, the first time he did so against Naruto. Surzix parried Naruto's sloppy overhand and twisted his sword, making the point hook onto the guard of his brother's blade, and with one last flick he disarmed the little red-haired preteen. He held his wooden blade to Naruto's throat and glared down at the smaller boy. "You're dead." But Naruto wasn't afraid, he just blinked up at the Satan Lucifer. "You fought back," the boy muttered. X took the wooden sword away from his brother's throat before stepping closer. He ruffled Naruto's hair and crouched down before him. "Let me guess, getting a bit frustrated?" Naruto sighed and nodded his head. "Yeah, a bit." X tilted his head to the side. "And why would that be?" "Because I should be stronger," the boy muttered while kicking his feet in annoyance. X didn't laugh or reprimand Naruto. Instead, he just looked at the boy searchingly. "You're 10, X said at last in an even tone. "I feel a lot older than 10. Naruto shot back. He felt like he was 23, which was true in a way. "I bet you do, but that wasn't the question I wanted to have answered," X said, still looking at Naruto in that uncomfortable seeking way. "Why do you feel like you should be stronger by now? What would you do with your strength?" "Protect Rias." The answer left Naruto's lips before he even had time to ponder the question he was asked. It was natural, just as natural as everything else that concerned his sister. There was no hesitation and no need to second-guess himself. It was his main priority, and everything else came second. "From what?" X asked. "Rias is not in any danger." "But one day she will be. And that day is still far away, little brother." "But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't already prepare myself for it." Naruto's temper was wearing thin, and X rebuking all the reasons he had to want to get stronger was truly grating on his nerves. "But you are preparing yourself for the future, aren't you?" X kept prodding his little brother, his expression never changing, nor did his tone. He was just needling Naruto because he knew that there was more to this than even Naruto himself realized or wanted to admit. "How?" Naruto roared. "By learning how to write in ancient languages that aren't used anymore. Or how about art? Yes, I know how to distinguish a fake painting from a real one. Great. Knowing that will be useful when I'm bleeding out on the ground with a hole in my chest." X blinked at Naruto. "You talk as if it's already decided that you will become a warrior." "Well, of course I will," Naruto said. "What did you all think that I would become once I grew up? A scholar? I'm pretty sure that mother and father were hoping that you would." Naruto looked away from his brother with an adorable pout on his young face. "Well, I'm not." X smiled at his brother. "Okay, so you want to become a warrior, but that still doesn't mean that you are in any rush. You have a deal with our father, right? What was it again?" Naruto sighed. "We agreed that I would put all my effort into the lessons that I'm taught now, and that once Rias and I are old enough to gain our evil pieces, he and mother would train us how to fight with our demonic energy. And that's only a few years off now, so please be patient, little brother." X ruffled Naruto's hair again. "Treasure your childhood, Naruto. You only get to live it once. You and your sister are safe, and any who would wish to do you harm will have to go through me." "But Naruto shook his head and sighed. "All right, Nichan, I'll try to be patient." "Good, I'm proud of you, Naruto." X smiled. "And tell you what, if you truly want to train, then I'll see if I can free up some time." Naruto's eyes lit up. "You mean it?" The Satan Lucifer laughed before raising his hands. "Now hold your horses, little brother. I will not awaken your demonic energy, and I will not go against mother and father's wishes, but I'm sure that I can free up some time to teach you a few things." Naruto crossed his arms and gave his brother a suspicious look. "What things?" X's sweat dropped at his brother's sudden shift in attitude. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, I just want to make sure that I'm not going to waste my time by accepting your training." Naruto huffed out. He wouldn't make that mistake again. He had far too many shitty teachers in his life as Uzumaki Naruto, and that was not something that he would go through again. "No thanks." "You little brat." X bonked Naruto's head hard enough to send the boy into a journey to meet the ground, face first. "A goddamn Satan is offering you training and you're asking what I can teach you." Naruto looked up from the ground, ignoring the bright red bruise on his forehead. "Well, of course I am. Because if you're going to ask me to pop a balloon, I'm going to lose my shit." "Why would I want you to pop a freaking balloon?" X shouted while throwing his hands up in the air. Naruto blinked in surprise before his face flushed red. "Oh, never mind that." "You're a moron." "I am not." "You are." "I am not." "R2." "I am not." "R2. So, want my training?" "Yes, please." "Fine, then let us get started right now." "Wait, with what?" Naruto asked hesitantly, backing away from his grinning older brother. Well, with your training, of course. Surzex laughed lightly before his entire body exploded in a wave of red-on-black energy. And your first task is to dodge. Oh shit! At the same time, different place. Inside the family room of Highschool DxD sat 3 women, well 2.5 women to be precise. Each of them was dressed to impress, wearing luxurious gowns as they sat down to have their tea time. Vanillana DxD and her daughter Rias were sitting on one couch, and across from them sat the DxD house's head majordomo, and wife to Lucifer himself, Graphia Lucifuge. The most powerful queen of the underworld was dressed in an amazing silver-on-blue gown that elevated her beauty far beyond the reaches of mortals. But what stood out even more than her undeniable beauty was the noticeable bulging belly that the woman sported. The silver-haired beauty had a small smile on her face as she rubbed her belly with one hand while enjoying a cup of Earl Grey with the other. Vanillana too was striking quite the pleasurable image in her modest white-brown evening gown. She had her hair done up in a bun, held in place with weaves of golden bands, and around her neck, she wore a rosary with a red ruby inlaid as the face of the piece of jewelry. Now Vanillana would never say that out loud, but for a devil such as her, wearing a rosary was pretty much the devil equivalent of flexing her power. Only devils of the ultimate class or higher could touch or wear objects of the faith without harming themselves. And Vanillana always wore her rosary, which should be telling enough. And finally, next to Vanillana, on her mother's right, was Rias, who made for one adorable little girl in her red ball gown. The girl had her hair done up in the same manner as her mother, and there was a light dusting of blush on her cheeks as well as a colorless lip gloss that only served to bring out the natural deep red of her lips. Rias wore a pair of golden ear clips that framed her entire earlobe without the need of piercing her ears, which she was not allowed yet, and a long golden necklace was wrapped around her neck and went down to her non-existent cleavage in several loops. The 2.5 women were enjoying their tea and biscuits in comfortable silence until Rias perked up with a questioning look in her eyes. Ne-sama, how does it feel like to be pregnant? The girl asked the Silver Queen that sat across from them. Said woman was taken off guard by the question but was quick to compose herself. She was about to answer the girl, but a laugh from her lady mother stopped her from doing so. My, Rias-chan, is someone getting curious already? Vanillana asked with a teasing smile on her lips. Rias scrunched up her face in confusion before nodding. Yes, I really am. Both adult women's sweat dropped. Of course, the innuendo flew right over the girl's head, which, come to think of it, was really for the best. Vanillana had to ask herself what she was expecting by teasing a girl that was basically still a taller toddler. Graphia lightly coughed into her hand and mulled on how to answer the question of her little lady. It's difficult to put words to it, Lady Rias. Pregnancy is something that needs to be experienced to understand, and I do not experience any of the common symptoms and complaints that other women do myself. The only thing I feel is a weight in my stomach and the overwhelming urge to protect my child from harm. Rias nodded before another question popped into her mind. And what are the common symptoms of pregnancy? The woman smiled at the girl, and how adorable it was to watch her struggle with pronouncing difficult words. Well, Vanillana began, the most common symptoms would be the nesting instinct that Graphia just told you about. A kind of protective feeling that wells up inside of you as you go through the different stages of pregnancy. Something like the feeling I get when I see Oniai-chan struggling with something, or whenever gets into those moods of his. The girl asked excitedly. Vanillana laughed openly, and even Graphia was hard to put to repress her amusement at the girl's cute charm. Something like that, yes. Vanillana patted her daughter's head, which earned her a grin from the little girl. But there's more, right? Like getting a big belly and stuff. Oh, you are so cute! Vanillana cooed and gave her daughter a one-armed hug, pulling the girl into her side while also being careful with her daughter's expensive gown. But yes, there is much more to pregnancy than just the nesting instinct. There's also a general sense of nausea, with or without vomiting, tender and sore, a lack of concentration, fatigue, aching muscles and joints, an increased urge to visit the toilet, problems with skin, hair, and nails, and a few other little pains and problems. And the fun thing is that we devils aren't at all an exception to any of those things. If anything, we have it worst. Throughout Vanillana's explanation, Rias's face continued to fall more and more, and once the matriarch had finished her little tale, the girl looked as if she had bitten into a lemon. Such was the amusing sight that even someone like Graphia had to cover her mouth with the palm of her hand to stop her laughter from spilling forth. Because Graphia knew the truth about Vanillana's pregnancy with the twins. The noble lady was truly speaking from experience, because Vanillana had experienced all the things she had just listed when she was pregnant with Naruto and Rias. That sounds awful. Rias cried with a sour look upon her face before shaking her head. Why would anyone want to go through something like that? Venelana gained a soft look on her face, and she leaned down to place a feather-light kiss onto Rias' forehead. Because baby, it's worth it. Rias looked confused but happy. Her mommy's affectionate kiss may have been a reason for that, and she snuggled into her mother's side before letting out a happy sigh. Is there anything else you want to know, baby girl? Venelana asked and lightly rubbed her daughter's sides. The girl blinked tiredly as her mother's warmth worked wonders in making her sleepy. Yes, how do you become pregnant? Both Graphia's and Venelana's eyes flew open, and their mouths dropped into cute little O's. Oh, that's... My. Luckily, the two speechless and lost women were saved from answering that question by the sudden feeling of Surzek's demonic energy that welled up from the castle's gym. Though, sadly for all three, 2.5 women, feeling Surzek's demonic energy also caused them to get a migraine, as they all knew that Satan Lucifer was currently with his little brother. As such, there was only one thing that they were asking themselves. What are those two idiots doing now? Later. Nighttime. The twins were all curled up in the silken sheets of their shared bed, yet only one of them was snoring peacefully as she lay with her head resting comfortably on her brother's chest. Said other twin was restless and covered in a sheen of sweat, his legs kicking, and both of his hands balled into white-knuckled fists. Hey, loser. Sasuke. God fucking damn it, it hurt. It hurt so badly to see Sasuke like this. As if someone had his heart in a stranglehold. To see the boy that was like a brother look down on him so coldly, with so much malice in his eyes, and Orochimaru's curse spreading over half of his face, dyeing one of his eyes a malicious, sulfuric yellow. It hurt worse than any wounds that he had ever suffered. Why? Naruto croaked out, why would you do this? Sasuke chuckled, a crazed sound to be sure, and tilted his head aside. What's it matter to you? Huh? I asked, what does it matter to you? Sasuke took a step forward while spreading his arms to the side, standing proudly on top of Madara Uchiha's statue. Whatever I do, whatever I decide, it's of no concern to you, loser. I'm done fooling around with you children of the leaf. Naruto growled and gritted his teeth, kicking and squirming, and his sister on top of him squirmed in turn as her pillow refused to stay still. Go home. Naruto had to take a step back as if physically struck by the Dark Avenger standing across from him. How dare he? How dare he belittle his comrades? How dare he make light of their bonds? How dare he? Naruto felt red-hot fury course through his veins, his fists tightened, and his nails broke the skin of his palms. His entire body was tense, and there was something else that he could feel welling up from deep within, from the core of his very being. How dare you take light your comrades of the leaf? Before he even knew it, Naruto found himself soaring through the air. His anger too great to restrain, his hurt too deep to ignore, and he just wanted to punch that prick. That was all that he cared about. His body collided with that of Sasuke, and he brought the last Uchiha down to his back, and then without even thinking he let his fist fly forth where it impacted with the side of Sasuke's face. Yet Sasuke didn't seem to care. Sasuke just turned to look at Naruto, and then he spat in the blonde's face. Sasuke's lips curled back in a maddening smirk, and then he began to giggle, a deranged sound that sent shivers down Naruto's spine. Hey, loser, Sasuke began while his hands slowly wandered up towards Naruto's throat. You wanted to fight me, right? Naruto struggled against Sasuke's hand as it tried to wrap itself around his throat, but he couldn't stop it. Sasuke's strength was unreal. Rias frowned when she felt her soft and warm pillow becoming increasingly hot, to a point where she felt like her face was going to scald. Her eyes flew open with a gasp, and she shot away from the heat in shock, and when she finally saw what caused her such discomfort, her eyes widened in disbelief. You were always so thrilled with the idea, weren't you? Sasuke asked lightly while still holding Naruto's throat in a vice-like grip. You were different than, Naruto rasped out, trying in vain to remove Sasuke's hand from his throat. The blonde shinobi could feel how his brother-in-law, but blood was slowly pushing himself up, and try as he might, he couldn't stop him from doing so. It was as if Sasuke suddenly possessed incredible strength that dwarfed Naruto's own. And soon enough, despite his best effort to resist Sasuke, Naruto found himself dangling off the ground, held up by the throat, helpless and afraid. Right then Sasuke smirked and tightened his grasp on Naruto's throat, making the dangling boy sputter and cough. Why don't we have that fight that you've always wanted? Sasuke's hand lit up with lightning and the sound of 1,000 chirping birds echoed through the valley of the end. Oni-chan. Waguk what? Naruto's head swam. Everything before him was getting blurry. Sasuke's figure stretched and morphed, like a far-off object in a scalding desert, and Naruto became lightheaded and numb to everything around him. He could still feel the hand around his throat, but there was no pain or pressure, just a light ghostly feeling as if he tried to remember a feeling of discomfort that had happened ages ago. What did you say, you bastard? Naruto roared into Sasuke's face, ignoring everything else around him, completely oblivious to the fact that he was now floating in front of Sasuke's still image like a wrathful god. His eyes were two orbs of violent crimson that sparked red lightning to the side. What are you, deaf loser? Sasuke's fading image mocked. I said. Oni-chan, wake up! Gasp. Naruto felt himself jolt upwards as all air left his lungs in a violent gasp that left him breathless after. He was drenched in sweat and his body felt incredibly hot, uncomfortably so. He reached up with a hand to rub at his eyes, trying to rub away the burning sweat that dripped into those wide and fearful orbs. But he didn't get the chance as his hand was caught by another. He looked up, his eyes trying to focus on the figure that was before him, trying to regain the clarity to properly see and comprehend the world before him. Sure, it's alright, you're alright, it was only a nightmare. He felt soft hands on his cheeks, brushing softly against his sweaty and hot skin, and slowly the blurry figure before him took on a shape that was familiar to him. Rias. A dream. A nightmare. It was so real, it felt as if it all happened again. Naruto felt himself being pulled forward where his face met the soft skin of his sister's nape. He inhaled her sweet scent, allowing it to become his anchor to reality, and then he closed his eyes. When Naruto woke from his nightmare, Rias knew only one thing: she needed to comfort her brother. She didn't know why, she just knew to do it. As such, she wasted no time before she pulled her brother into her arms in a comforting hug. She whispered sweet nothings to him, just like their mother used to do when they were smaller. She combed a soothing hand through Naruto's sweaty hair, and she listened to his erratic panting, sighing to herself when she noticed his breathing even out. What happened? Wondered the girl frantically. That was the first time that her dear brother had such a bad nightmare. Oh, she had caught him kicking and squirming in his sleep before, but it had never gotten this bad. His entire body was scalding hot, and even now as he lay in her arms, she could feel how uncomfortably hot he was against her skin. And when he had opened his eyes, Rias felt awestruck. Naruto's eyes weren't their usual, pretty crystal clear blue that she had grown to love so much. No, they were different but no less beautiful. They were red, a crimson that matched his hair perfectly, and they were so vibrant. When she stared into those orbs, she could see a storm of black and red lighting that was trapped behind his iris, as if the storm in his eyes reflected the storm in his head. It had Rias worried, but it was also kind of awesome. Thank you? She heard her brother mumble against the skin of her neck, and she squirmed as he did. She felt ticklish there. But no, this wasn't a situation to play around with. Her brother needed her comfort. Anytime. She muttered and placed a light kiss on top of his sweaty hair. What were you dreaming about? It's nothing. Rias frowned at Naruto's blatant lie, and that wouldn't do at all. She hated it when her brother was keeping things from her, and she wasn't about to let him think that he could get away with something like that either. I hate it when you lie to me, Oni-chan. She whispered out and tightened her hold on the boy when she felt him tense up. She held onto him tightly, and refused to budge until the boy finally sighed and mumbled something into her neck that she just barely managed to catch. I was fighting someone. Who were you fighting? Rias prodded while continuing to comb her hand through Naruto's hair. A ghost. Rias blinked. A ghost? She felt her brother nod. And did you at least kick the ghost's ass? The boy shuddered. No, I wasn't strong enough. Rias swallowed hard and held her brother even tighter. She didn't know what to say to that, but Naruto's disappointed tone felt like a dagger to her heart. Damn it! She wanted to comfort her dear brother, but how could she do that when she didn't know what to say? In the end, she just settled for holding the boy, hoping that her hugging him would give him enough strength to pull through this. Even if she didn't know what to say to him to cheer him up, she would be here with him. She would hold him until his pain would fade. She'd always be here for him, just like she knew that he would always be here for her. Unbeknownst to the girl, her hair began to float ominously behind her, and as her eyes stared ahead into the darkness of the night, they bled into crimson. Rias sighed to herself. 2 years had passed since her brother suffered that terrible nightmare, and it had changed him. He was still her loving brother, but he was different. There was a drive to him now. It was as if he wanted to keep what happened to him in his nightmare from happening in the real world. And so, he trained. He trained like a devil possessed, doing all manner of strange things and claiming that it would make him stronger. She had caught him jumping through trees, climbing their tops, and then racing along the branches. He trained by throwing weapons at targets, and he was amazing at doing so. She never saw him miss, not once. He took to swordplay as a fish did to water, and of course, he even worked with his demonic energy, without their parents' consent at that. Yes, Rias knew that her brother had awoken something that night. He had tapped into his demonic energy, and the next morning he had asked Rias to hide that from their parents, and she had agreed. Of course, she wanted to tell her parents the truth. She hated to lie after all, but Rias knew that Naruto needed this. She knew that her brother felt insecure about something, and in his eyes, the only way to cure that insecurity was by becoming stronger as a person. And she promised herself that she would help him any way she could. It was the least that she could do after all. But if she were, to be honest with herself, she didn't understand why Naruto wouldn't go to their parents for help. She was sure that if he told them the truth about his nightly terrors, then their parents would stop at nothing to help him. They were their parents, after all. But even if she found Naruto to be in the wrong in this situation, she did promise to stand with him, always, and that was what she would do. After all, much like her brother, she never went back on her word. Besides, it wasn't as if their mother wasn't already on to Naruto's little scheme. It would be a cold day in hell before her dear brother would be able to fool their mother. Rias had seen the suspicious looks that their mother had given him, and the girl was sure that their mother had a reason for letting Naruto do as he pleased. What that reason could be, though, now that was something that she didn't fully grasp yet. Anyhow, the little lady was currently watching how her twin was put through one of Surzek Senai-sama's lessons. She watched how Naruto was basically told to swing around a long pipe of rebar with 2 hunks of concrete on each side, and all the while Surzek would fire small bolts of magic at her twin. Surzek called that dodge training. Rias would call it something different, but she didn't interfere as Naruto didn't seem to mind the training. Quite the contrary, there was a big smile on her twin's face as went through quarterstaff stances while simultaneously avoiding Surzek's random attacks. Truly, once Rias got over her protective worries, she found that watching her brother train was fascinating indeed. She memorized the way he moved, his strengths and weaknesses, training her mind by memorizing her twin's tells, how he would telegraph an attack, or how he moved when preparing a feint, or how his muscles would tense up whenever he made for a finishing blow. She wouldn't say that she was perfect because even after watching Naruto and Surzek train so many times now, there were still times when her brother would go against her expectations and do something that she'd never seen him do before. She learned that her brother was a very reactive fighter. He was not one to strategize or plan, rather allowing his opponent to make the opening move and then acting accordingly. And that was something that worked incredibly well for her brother because while he may not plan ahead, he was incredibly gifted when it came to thinking on his feet. Oh! Rias winced and scrambled aside to avoid her twin who was sent flying after Surzek had finally managed to land a sneak attack on the boy. Naruto! Surzek bellowed, why didn't you dodge? Rias' sweat dropped and quickly ran up to Naruto where she helped the boy sit up, while also checking him over for any major injuries. When she saw a small burn mark on his right pectoral, she looked at Surzek and gave him a scathing glare. Now she wasn't mad at Surzek, it was Naruto's fault, after all. Still, no one was allowed to hurt her twin without her express permission. What? Naruto could be an idiot at times, and then he'd need a few whacks to set him straight again. That's how her twin worked. She wasn't enjoying it or anything. Surzek for his part chuckled awkwardly after seeing her glaring murder at him. Hey now Riatan, that was his fault, and you know it. The girl kept up her glare before muttering, doesn't mean that I have to like it. She heard a cough from her right and looked down at her grinning twin. It's alright Rias-chan, I should have been able to dodge that. Fine. Rias pouted and looked away from her brothers, blushing when she heard both laugh at her. She felt Naruto ruffle her hair before he stood up again and once more walked into the middle of the clearing they used to train. A clearing in the woods that were located just outside of Castle Gremory. She watched Naruto pick up his heavy weapon before he turned to face Surzek. Well then big bro, let's get this started again. No, Surzek shook his head. I'm sorry but I have a meeting with the other Satans scheduled and need to get myself ready for a trip to Lilith. Oh. Naruto's eyes lit up in excitement. Hey big bro, do you think that I could tag along? I really want to see Lilith for myself. Rias bit her lip. Her dear brother had a point. She too wanted to see more of the underworld. Just think about the splendor of Lilith, or the wondrous sight of Agria's city floating in the sky, was enough to get her all excited. So, she nodded as well. Me too. I want to see Lilith as well. I don't know you two. I will be busy and won't have the time to watch out for you. Surzex spoke truthfully. Besides, Mother and Father would flail me alive if they found out that I took you outside of our territory without their permission. But Nai-chan, what they don't know won't hurt them, right? Naruto asked while putting on the best puppy dog look he could muster. Surzex shook his head. No. Oh, come on. What's the worst that could happen if we tagged along with you? That's not the point, little brother, Surzex stated with a sigh. Then what is? Your lies. Surzex stated with a frown on his face. They are the problem. Naruto frowned as well before looking away from his brother. Our secret little training sessions are one thing, we aren't hurting anyone with them, so I don't mind. But you are the heir of House Gremory, sneaking out of our castle, and lying to our parents at seemingly every turn. That is something I mind, very much. In fact, I'm quite fed up with it, especially because you are making Rias do the same. Save it. Surzex said, I don't want an explanation or a reason for your actions. I'm disappointed that you feel like you need to lie to us, your family, but I do have the hope that you will open up on your own one day. Naruto said nothing, he just stood there with his head bowed low. But that aside, if you two want to join me on my trip, then go and ask Mother and Father for permission. Surzex took out a gilded pocket watch and checked the time. You have an hour before I need to leave. With that said, Lucifer turned and walked away from his siblings. Nisama is right, you know? Rias said as she walked up to her twin. Naruto sighed and nodded. I know. Rias placed a soft hand on her brother's shoulder and gently turned him to face her. Then why are you still hiding things from me? Naruto looked up and Rias gasped when she saw his eyes swim with unshed tears. Believe me when I say that would like nothing more than to tell you all the truth, but I can't. Rias too felt wetness gather in her eyes. Why can't you tell me? She cried. I don't know. Naruto shouted while throwing his hands into the air, a pitiful expression marring his face. I don't know. Whenever I try to talk about it, I feel my mouth clamped shut, and I can't make it open again, no matter how much I try. Believe me, Rias-chan, I want to tell you all about my nightmares, my problems, and the memories that haunt me every day, but I just can't. The boy was left panting after his tirade, and his eyes widened when he felt himself enveloped in a warm hug. It's all right, I believe you, Naruto-kun, Rias said while holding her brother tightly within her arms. I just hope that one day, you'll be able to talk about the things that trouble you so. I hope so too. Naruto mumbled into Rias's beautiful crimson mane, I truly do. The twins stayed like that for several moments, enjoying each other's presence as they lovingly embraced. And it was with a heavy heart that Naruto finally pulled away from Rias, still holding her by her shoulders while giving her a small smile. I don't know how I deserve to have such a beautiful, kind-hearted, and understanding girl as my sister, he said softly, almost reverently, which caused Rias's face to light up in a bright crimson flush. Oh, stop it, you, she mumbled and fidgeted cutely, it's embarrassing. Naruto chuckled before threading his hand through his sister's hair, but it's also true, and that right there isn't something I would ever lie about. Ria's face heated up even further if that was at all possible, but she did reward Naruto with a bright smile for his sweet words. Naruto looked up at the artificial sun that hung above in the sky, and he wondered how much time must have passed since Surzex left. I think that if we hurry to Mother and Father, we can still ask them if can go with Ni-chan to Lilith, so what do you say, Rias-chan? The girl shook her head and smiled at her twin, her cheeks still colored a cute rosy hue. I really want to see the capital for myself, so let's give it a shot. Even if Mother and Father won't allow us to go, we can say that we at least tried. Naruto nodded, then let's do it. With that, the twins unfurled their black, leathery wings and took flight into the direction of their home castle. Venelana was seated comfortably in her husband's office, enjoying some quality time with the man she loved. Said Lord was seated right next to her on a soft, Victorian-themed couch. The two lovers were not doing any work now, instead, they opted to just enjoy some quiet time in each other's presence. It was something that they liked to do whenever the opportunity arose, and it was also something that they both needed. Just some time to relax, with nothing to worry about except for themselves, a time where they could let go of all troubles that they faced in their daily lives. Venelana sighed and leaned into her husband's side, smiling as Zeoticus wrapped one of his strong arms around her waist and pulled her closer into him. "This is nice," Venelana mumbled, staring out the grand window that was across from them. Yes it is." Her husband's deep baritone rumbled in her ears, a pleasant sound if there ever was one. But alas, their quiet time was not meant to be. Both the lord and lady looked at the large, wooden office doors upon hearing someone knock. Venelana smiled when she heard her husband sigh before grumbling something intelligible to himself. "Enter," her lord husband said at last, and his despondent tone of voice was almost enough to make her laugh. The two of them heard the office doors being pushed open, and looking at who had entered made them both smile. "Hey, Mom, Dad!" They heard the voice of their little son call out, which was quickly being followed by the sound of squabbling. "Hey, don't you dare hit me again, little missy." "Then maybe you should start by being more respectful to mother and father." "But I am. You can't tell me that there is something wrong with calling them Mom and Dad while we are in private. Did you forget that you always seem to call Mom Mommy? So why can't I do the same?" Venelana and Zeoticus chuckled when they heard Rias sputter in embarrassment. "That's different, and you know it." "How so?" "Well, because I'm the girl." "And what's that supposed to mean?" It means that I get a free pass to do cute things with Mommy I mean mother." "Oh, how convenient." Listening to their adorable children arguing with each other was almost enough to make the lord and lady on the couch break out into hysteria. Even now on the precipice of their teens, the twins were just too cute. "All right, you two, break it up." Zeoticus spoke up at last, mirth lacing his every syllable. "Is there anything you need, my children?" Oh, just listening to her husband talk with their children was enough to make Venelana's insides flutter. She always enjoyed hearing her man talk like the proud Papa Bear that she knew he was. Yes, her son began. "We wanted to ask if we could join Sirzix and I on his trip to Lilith." The first thing that came to her mind was a big and clear no, and looking at her husband she could tell that he was feeling much the same on the matter. But she halted her lips from saying that one word, as did her husband. Again their thoughts must have been on the same wave. Thinking about it more caused Venelana to realize something that she had noticed for a while now. Her dear children grew restless and bored within the confines and safety of their castle. And truthful, Naruto and Rias were 12 now, and as much as she loathed to admit it, her babies were slowly growing into their own, and she could tell that they were wanting to choose their paths already. It was a painful thought, but one that also filled her with immense pride. And lastly, she didn't want to push Naruto even further into isolation. She knew that he was already hiding things from her husband and her, little things to be sure, but that Naruto felt like he needed to do that already could be seen as a big red flag. Especially that he felt like he needed to hide the fact that he and Rias had awoken their demonic energy over 2 years ago that had her worried. But she also wouldn't give up the hope that her son would come to tell her on his own. And maybe he would do that if they were to allow the twins to have some more freedom. She looked at her husband and their eyes met. She could see the concern in Zeoticus's clear blue eyes, and she did not doubt that her own eyes had to mirror her husband. Nonetheless, the two parents nodded at each other, and Zeoticus spoke. "Very well." He nodded before rising from the couch to face the twins. "I'll allow it." "Really?" Both Naruto and Rias cried as one, a look of vibrant excitement on their young faces. "Thank you." And so it was that Zeoticus Gremory found himself barreled over and lying on the ground with two overeager and excited children on his chest, both trying to figure out if their heads would fit into his ribcage the way they were burrowing and pushing against him. Venelana laughed, openly and loudly, and when her husband looked at her pleadingly, she only laughed more. After letting her husband suffer at the hands of his toddlers for a while, Venelana too rose from the couch and walked up to her family. "All right, you two, stop suffocating your father, we still need him for a while." "Hey, that's mean." She ignored her husband's outcry. "Besides, you didn't allow your father to finish setting his conditions." The twins nodded and quickly jumped away from their father, who was finally allowed to inhale some sweet, sweet air. Zeoticus rose from the ground, dusted himself off, and rubbed his ribs with a small wince. Damn, his children were quite strong when they felt affectionate. He looked at the two bright-eyed children standing in front of him, before putting on a serious face. "Yes, as your mother said, I have some conditions before I allow you to leave the castle. First, you will listen to everything that your brother says, is that clear?" Naruto and Rias nodded while giving their father a soldier's salute. "Second, I will give you a bodyguard, and if Sirzix should be too busy with his work to pay attention to you, you will listen to your bodyguard without fail. If I should learn that you were troublesome, this will be the first and last time that I'll allow you to leave the castle without me or your mother, so don't disappoint me. Yes, father. And lastly, just promise me that you'll be careful and that you'll carry yourselves befitting for nobles of House Gremory. Zeoticus ruffled the twins' heads with a soft look in his eyes, and most importantly, have fun, all right? Yes, Dad/Father. The twins grinned before giving the man a hug, which he was quick to return. After they separated, Zeoticus took a step back and clapped his hands, which caused a guard to enter through the doors. My lord? The guard, dressed from head to toe in a golden and black plate that was inlaid with ruby red jewelry, asked his lord. Call for my knight, Artemisia. I have an assignment for her. Your will shall be done, my lord. Naruto and Rias looked at one another and grinned. We are finally going to see the capital. Whoa! The little girl gasped in awe. The capital is so big. It truly was a splendid sight to behold. Big was too small a word to describe Lilith. Massive or gargantuan would be more fitting in the small girl's mind. The city was round, or maybe oval-shaped, she couldn't tell, and 3 massive walls surrounded the city. And as far as she was aware, behind each of the 3 monstrous walls, the city became more and more pretty and luxurious. With the centermost ring of the capital being the richest of them all, it was also where Satan Palace was located. It was the massive pyramid that could be seen in the middle of the capital. It was so big that it even dwarfed the 3 walls. Even if she looked all the way up, she couldn't see even halfway up the pyramid, because it broke through the clouds. It was really big, and the lithe girl couldn't help but wonder where it ended. Was it going all the way up to Earth, she wondered? And another thing that shot through her mind was why something so big was built in the first place. Who needed such a massive palace? With how big that thing was, she did not doubt that hundreds of thousands of people could live in that palace, and there probably would still be space for more. The girl felt a hand on top of her head, and she smiled up at her big brother. What are you going on about? We aren't even in the capital yet. She gasped and looked at her brother with wide eyes. We aren't? But we just passed Wall Maria, didn't we? Yes, and also no, her brother said before raising a hand and pointing it at the massive wall that was on the other end of the city. That over there is Wall Maria, and that behind us is also Wall Maria. We are in one of the 4 gate districts that everyone needs to pass before they are allowed to enter the capital itself. This district is called Sigansina. Whoa! The girl felt awed, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. She looked at the other figure that was with them, standing in front of her brother and her with a worn, brown cloak covering her entire frame from head to toe. Did you hear that one, Ichan? The capital is amazing! The cloaked figure turned slightly, strands of silvery white hair swaying out from beneath her cowl, and the little girl saw her older sister's beautiful blue eyes. I'm glad that you're enjoying yourself, Lisanna, but let's keep moving. We should try to get into the capital before nightfall. I've heard that this district isn't very safe for demons like us. The little girl's face fell, and she nodded, wincing as the terrible weight of their reality came down to crush her moment of happiness, as brief as it was. Mixed heritage devils was what people called them. It took a long time until Lisanna realized that that title was bad for them, that is. They were the lowest of the low, standing even beneath the low-class devils that made up much of the population of their home, the underworld. Mixed heritage devils, that cruel title announced them as the offspring of a reincarnated devil and a true descendant of the underworld. As such, they weren't seen as true devils, nor could they lay claim to the protection of a noble house like the reincarnated devils could. And worst of all was the fact that they did not know who their father was, so there was no claim whatsoever that they could make to increase their status to even the low class. They were classless. And as such, they were worthless even in the eyes of the low class. And their mother's reputation made it all even worse. Lisanna wanted to love her mother, but it was oh so hard to do that when her mere name brought them nothing but trouble. Their mother was a reincarnated devil, and she was disgraced because she lived through a battle in which her king, Lord Visago, the heir to House Visago, was struck down. From what Lisanna knew, and she didn't know much about it at all, their mother was then taken prisoner and brought before the Lord Satans, who ultimately pardoned her as she had no hand in her king's death. But the damage was already done. Lord Visago was a good king and a much beloved noble. Their mother was his queen, and she let him die even though that she was dead. The people still dragged her name through the mud. They were saying mean things about her. And if they saw her older sister... Lisanna wiped away the tears that wanted to escape her eyes. It's not fair that Mirene is treated badly just because she resembles mommy so much. But no, she reminded herself, their mother's reputation wasn't the only reason why they suffered so much. Lisa was ripped from her sullen thoughts when she noticed her sister begin to walk ahead of them. She looked at her older brother, Elfman, and saw him nod in Mirene's direction before he too began to walk. Lisa dried her eyes and put on a brave face before she began to run after her older siblings. She managed to catch up with them again quickly and fell into stride. Despite the unpleasant thoughts that coursed through her mind only minutes ago, she couldn't help the big and toothy smile on her face as she beheld the sights they passed. It was all so lively. Devils of all shapes, forms, and sizes were going their merry ways. There were traders on every corner, haggling and bartering their wares, and the street artists they passed. Everything was so pretty, and the girl couldn't help but soak it all in with a big smile on her young face. A few hours later, the three siblings were walking for quite a while now, Lisa realized, but the big wall just didn't seem to get closer. Just how big was this gate district? They'd been walking for 3 or 4 hours now, and still, the wall didn't look to be much closer than when they began their trek. She suddenly bumped into her older sister's back when she suddenly stopped, and Lisa felt Mirene's hands on her shoulders to steady her. "What's wrong, Nei-chan?" "It's dust," the taller girl stated. "We won't make it to the gate before nightfall." "So what?" Lisa heard Elfman ask. "This is a city. The streets should be well lit even at night, right?" "That may be true, but don't forget where we are," Mirene muttered in that despondent tone of hers. "This is an outer district. Haven't you noticed the lack of guards, outposts, and overall security? And just look around." Mirene waved her left hand, pointing at all the pretty ladies that stood around lampposts and street corners, and then she pointed at the rough and rugged men that could be seen standing close to the women, some even touching them in weird places, shoving their hands roughly down the women's cleavage or up their skirts. "This isn't a place where I want to be at night," Mirene said. "We need to find some safe spot to hold out until morning." Elman seemed to catch on quick because he only nodded and began to search around. "Nei-chan, do we have enough coin to spend the night at an inn?" her brother asked. "Maybe," Mirene answered before taking out a pouch that was filled with the remainders of their mother's life savings. "But if we do spend the night at an inn, we will be completely broke until I manage to find some work." "Oh, looking for work, are we, little lady?" All three siblings looked aside at the place the voice had come from, and they saw a tall, rough-looking man come walking up towards them. "Sorry for listening to your conversation, but you know what they say about the streets and them having ears and all that, but where are my manners?" The man playfully bowed at them. "The name's Maul, happy to be at your service." "Maul?" she heard Mirene mutter. "Strange name you got there." "Wah." The man pointed at himself before chuckling and nodding at her older sister. "I suppose that you aren't wrong, but hey, at least I'm named after the things I do best." "Mauling things?" "Got it in one, little lady." The man knocked his head back and laughed boisterously. "When I was about your age, I was such a rabid beast that the masters that saw a use for my talents gave me a name that was befitting of my actions." Lisa felt herself being pulled to stand behind her older siblings before she heard Mirene's voice again. "And why would you tell us that? And here I thought that you were smart, little lady." The man shook his head in feigned disappointment. "You need coin, money, gold, shiny, call it what you will, and I am in the business of spotting talent when I see it, and so we could come to an agreement that could help fill all of our pockets with the good stuff." "And what kind of talent are you looking for?" Lisa could hear hesitation and unease in her older sister's voice, which was enough to make the girl gulp and take a step back from the strange and creepy man. "Well, talent like your brother here, and yes, I can see the resemblance," Maul said while giving Elfman an appreciative look. "So young and already he's growing some muscle on his arms and legs. Give him a few years and I'm sure that you little bro would become one hell of a man with a talent for knocking heads, wouldn't you agree? And that, little lady, is the kind of talent that I'm looking for." Maul took a step towards the siblings and the siblings took a step back. "And then there are the two of you," the man growled out, a sound that sent shivers down Lysana's back. "Now your little sister, and you are real tarts, you know that? I can see it even through your ugly cloak that you are already rocking some nice titties and a cute little ass, aren't you? And that, little lady, can make you a lot of wealth if you learn how to use it right." "We are leaving." Mirene's voice was cold and hard and she quickly turned and started to push Elfman and her away from the creepy man. Something that Lysana wouldn't complain about, not a bit. "Hey now, don't leave!" the man called after them. "I wasn't about to force you or your cute little sister into anything, so won't you hear me out before you walk away and run the risk of running into some asshole that isn't as kind-hearted as I?" "Kind-hearted?" Lysana jumped when Mirene bellowed at the man. "You're offering me to whore myself out? And that's bad because?" Lysana looked up at her sister to see her dumbstruck by the weird question. What did whoring yourself out mean? You want to keep your little siblings safe, don't you? And you probably will want to provide for them, right? Help them get an education and all that jazz. Well, little lady, what would you be willing to do to give them just that? You be better shut your mouth right and now. Elfman stuttered out, and Lysana looked at her brother to see that he was standing on shaky legs while trying to put up a brave face. Maul gave her brother a dismissive wave of his hand. Please stop embarrassing yourself, kiddo, and let me give you a little tip. When you want to threaten and intimidate someone, you'll want to make sure that you aren't looking like you're about to soil yourself. Now then, back to business, right? Maul cackled to himself. Where were we? All right. What would you be willing to do for your cute little siblings, Wouldn't life be so easy if you could provide them with a wonderful life by just lying on a bed all day? You know, there are humans up there that are dreaming of a life like that, to get paid handsomely for basically no work at all. And hey, they always say that it does not count as work if you're enjoying yourself, and believe me, it's easy to get a taste for that kind of work. Lysana looked at her sister's face, and saw that Mireille was biting her lip with a contemplative expression. Come on, little lady! The man cried excitedly, we are devils. Creatures of desire, of sin, and ecstasy, and you, girlie, have been gifted with a pretty face and a killer body. Well, it will be at the very least, given a good diet and a few years anyways, so why not use those gifts to live a life in the lap of luxury? Hell, with the way you look now, I bet that in no time at all you'll have some noble lordling suckling on your tit like a little kid. And if you manage that then you've won the devilish lottery, baby. Because believe me, our oh-so-noble rulers aren't skimpy with their favorite whores. Come on, big sis, don't listen to that creep. Elfman said pleadingly, can't you tell that that guy is full of shit? Am I now? Maul chuckled as he walked closer towards the three siblings. Well, I know that I'm a piece of shit, I own several whorehouses, so how could I not be? But you want to know something? I'm a piece of shit that gives a fuck about the people that work for me. I am an honest piece of shit, and believe me when I say, many other pieces of shit in this shitty city can't say the same about themselves. He was close to them now, and he was still coming closer until he stood right before her older sister. But let's ignore my offer for now, shall we? Let's roll back and start this from the beginning, alright? Hello, my name is Maul. Can I ask what three mixed breeds are doing in Lilith? Oh wait, you look just like her. Maul gasped in surprise and pointed a finger at Mireille, and Lysana could once more feel tears come to her eyes. He knew as well. Oh wow, that's right. You look just like that whore Lacinia. That bitch that allowed Lord Visego to die. How dare that cunt? And then she didn't even have the stones to kill herself after. So selfish. Can you believe it? Went around all sullen, begging for work, acting the part of the victim. Bah. Useless cunt. Who would want a used and broken toy like her? And I bet she even killed her king herself. Couldn't accept her place, I say. At the end of Maul's tirade, all three siblings were left shuddering and in Lysana's case sobbing, but the man didn't seem to care as he stepped even closer towards her older sister. And Lysana wanted nothing more than to curl up and cry. Do you see now, little lady? That terrible man asked lightly. You do look just like your mother, and even with that caul of yours, even if you hide your face, both your brother and little sister look like her as well. She was famous, you know. She was, for a time, the most desired woman in all the 9 circles, second only to bitches like Graphia Lucifuge. And that brat Marcus Visego's death was all the rage when it happened. You couldn't go 2 steps without some fucker crying for that brat, and then well, you couldn't go 2 steps without some fucker cursing your mother to heaven and back. So little lady, let me ask you again, what will you do? Really, what will you do, with that face of yours, with that rare shade of snow-white hair? Face it, little lady, unless you find a way to leave the underworld, there is no place where you can hide from your mother's shadow. Lysana heard her sister sob out, and that alone was near enough to break her little heart. But hey, if you don't want to accept my offer, you are free to go. Maul stepped back from her sobbing sister, looking pleasant as can be with a small and gentle smile on his face. I'm an honest devil, and I do as our race does best. I'm a dealer of simple choices, and I gave you yours. Now then, decide. Silence followed Maul's statement. Only the sobbing of Mireille and her could be heard by the 3 of them. There was still a bustle around them in the streets, but it was as if the other devils, demons, and yokai were deliberately avoiding the 4 of them. Then her sister moved a step closer towards Maul. Ayaki. Sorry, Lysana snapped her head back and spun her body and turned to get a look at the person that just talked. Wow, despite the situation, the girl was drawn to only one thing about that stranger, their hair so pretty. Who are you kids? Maul growled in annoyance. Yes, as I said, sorry, but the thing is, I couldn't help but listen in on your conversation. See, I have that weird condition, When I see a grown man harass a girl, I always get such an annoying tick, like a voice in my head that keeps telling me to kill that fucker, kill him good. It's really rubbing me the wrong way, you know? Oh, really now? Maul asked, and Lysana saw him turn to face the strange boy and the girl that was standing next to him. Oh yes. The girl next to the boy said. She looked just like the boy except for being a girl and had the same incredibly pretty hair. My Oni-chan can get a bit violent when he sees something like we just saw. Then let me ask you again, just who the fuck do you two kids think you are? Maul growled out through gritted teeth, and his entire body was enveloped in a purplish-black aura of energy, while a magic circle opened beneath him. You don't seem to understand, but this entire district belongs to me. Lysana's eyes opened wide when she saw the boy with the pretty hair just smile softly while clapping his hands. The girl next to him hid her smile with her hand, but Lysana could hear her giggles clear as day. Bravo! Good for you, really, I'm so proud of you, buddy. The boy mocked the grown man. And since you were kind enough to introduce yourself, Maul, right? Can I call you Maul? I'm gonna call you Maul. Well, Maul, let me return the kind gesture. This lovely lady right here is called Rias, and I am Naruto, the boy said while giving Maul a perfect bow, and the girl next to him curtsied. Rias and Naruto Gremory, a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Maul. What? Lysana's head snapped to the creepy man that had tormented her older sister, and she looked confused when she noticed that Maul lost all color in his face. He was pale enough to be a sheet of paper. Wait, it wasn't what it looked like, and besides, those three are mixed breeds, they're nobodies. Even worse, they are the children of Lord Visego's queen. Lord Visego, huh? That name does ring a bell, the boy muttered, raising a hand to rub at his chin. Brother, the boy looked at the pretty girl standing next to him. Lord Marcus Visego was the late heir and last pure-blooded son of the current head Lord Stefan Visego. He served the military and was well respected and liked, and 14 years ago he and his peerage were sent to patrol the borders close to the fallen angel territory where they were ambushed. Lord Marcus and 13 of his peerage perished that day. There was only one survivor, his queen and wife, Lady Licinia Visego. She was found barely clinging to life and was then brought before Satans to give her report, where the Lord Satans unanimously decided that she had no part in her husband's death, and she was spoken free from all alleged charges that were held against her. The boy looked confused and turned his head back to look at them. Then why are her children here? Because Mirene rasped out before turning to face the boy while pulling back her hood, letting her beautiful hair flow free, and showing her pretty face to them all. We aren't the children of Lord Visego. We don't know who our father, or maybe fathers are. How so? The boy asked while narrowing his eyes. Your lady sister was correct in everything that she said, my lord. Mirene began, her voice leaving her in a shuddering breath, but she failed to account for everything else that happened after our mother was spoken free of her charges. Lysana saw the young lord turn to face his sister once more, both sporting confused faces. That was all that mother told me. The red-haired girl muttered to her brother. Mind sharing the rest with us? The boy asked Mirene, who nodded, albeit reluctantly. It's not a pleasant story, I'm afraid. Mirene warned, but the young lord nodded nonetheless and motioned for her to continue. It's true that my mother was freed from her charges, but Lord Visego was furious with her, and upon returning he immediately annulled her marriage to his son, stripped her of any lands and titles that she had gained over the years she served House Visego, and lastly threw her out. You're joking, right? The boy growled lowly while his body was suddenly giving off a crimson glow. My lord! Maul cried, why would you get upset over something that was justified? Silence! The lord commanded, and even Lysana gulped while stepping behind her older siblings. You, Maul, will not talk unless spoken to, understood? He turned back towards Mirene. I'm sorry, but could you continue with your tale? I won't force you if it pains you too much. It's all right, my lord. Mirene began while wiping at her eyes. I've had to live with that story being a shadow looming over my head for my entire life now. I don't mind telling it again, and there isn't much left to tell anyways. After Lord Visego stripped my mother of her rank, titles, and marriage, she couldn't go anywhere. No one was willing to take her in because as a queen that allowed her king to die, her name was sullied beyond redemption. In the end, she couldn't even gain work as a lowly household guard, and having failed to gain work any other way, she was forced to sell her body just to scrape by. And that's how my siblings and I came to be. Lysana dared to take a glance up and saw that the young lord now sported a horrified expression upon his face, whereas her sister was just looking down at the ground, silent tears dripping down her cheeks. And then something happened that to Lysana felt like a true miracle. The young lord took a step forward and he embraced her sister. I'm so sorry. He pulled her sister in even tighter, wrapping her up all snug against his body before starting to comb his hand through her snow-white hair. I'm so sorry. And then Mirene let out a terrible wail before beginning to cry into the young lord's shoulder, letting out years of agony. Lysana and Elfman began to cry as well. Maul saw that the lordling was occupied with that white-haired bitch's sob story, and hey, he was always an opportunistic devil, and as such, he took the chance for what it was and tried to get the hell out of Dodge. He righted himself up and quickly turned to dart away. True, it was a shame that he couldn't get his hands on those girls, as with their looks he was sure that they would have made him a mint, but no amount of gold and jewelry was worth his head. He grinned when he saw that the coast was clear and took off in a dead sprint towards one of the alleyways next to the street. Getting there was easy enough, but he could feel that something wasn't right about this situation. He had a bad feeling, and as someone that worked in the criminal underworld of the underworld, he had long since learned to trust in his instincts. He looked around, frantically searching the alley for anyone or anything. But he saw nothing. Gasp. He inhaled sharply when he felt searing pain coming from his stomach and looked down. His eyes widened in disbelief. Where the hell did that thing come from? Why was there a Ziphos in his stomach? What the hell? The man looked up upon hearing heels hitting cobble, and when he did, his eyes widened in dread. That was the Knight of Lord Gremory coming towards him, right? Fucking hell, this just isn't my day. Honestly, those aren't bad words to choose as your last. I know, right? And so, the man lost his head in a dark alleyway and Artemisia walked away with a sway to her hips while humming a chipper tune. Naruto held the trembling girl in his arms, allowing her to take comfort from his presence, and he didn't care that he could feel the wetness of the girl's tears seep through his clothes. This was the least that he could do after all. He held her tight, wrapped up snug within a comfortingly tight hold, and he ran a hand through her hair like he would when holding Rias. He could feel the girl shudder and heard her sobs. It was heart-wrenching. He may not know the girl, and he may know very little of her pain, but he could empathize, probably more than anybody else. Hey, it's that brat. Just look at him acting all shy and innocent. I just wish that Lord Hokage would change his mind. My family is living here, and I don't want that monster anywhere close to them. Naruto closed his eyes tightly, pushed those useless memories away, and pulled the girl in even tighter. He stayed like that for what felt like hours, letting the pretty girl wail away until her throat went hoarse, and her shudders turned into soft spasms. He stayed like that, holding the girl in the middle of the street until she had tired herself out, and was leaning weakly against his frame. Naruto put a hand on the girl's waist to support her before he finally looked around. He smiled upon seeing his twin comfort the two white-haired children. It was a sweet sight, but pulling his eyes away revealed that they were still standing in the middle of an open street, with peasants, hookers, and ruffians looking at them as if they'd grown a second head, and yes, admittedly what he and his sister were doing did not make for a very noble sight. And he reminded himself that they did promise their father to act according to their station. But then again, isn't the Gremory family known for their kindness? So technically they weren't acting unbefitting of their station either. And that was good enough in Naruto's mind. He looked down at the girl in his arms and noted that she had fallen asleep at some point. Poor thing's probably exhausted. The girl was pretty, he noted, very much so. Even though she seemed to be dirty, and he would never say that out loud, reeked a bit, it was undeniable that this girl was one of the prettiest girls that he has ever seen. She had pale skin, a cute face, and she looked to be a few years older than him, as he could feel that she already possessed a figure that was more woman than a child. But what stood out to him most was her hair. It was white as snow, several shades lighter than Graphy as silver. Just by looking at the girl in his arms he knew why scum like Maul would feel drawn to her. He sighed again, something he felt like he did quite often lately before looking around the street they found themselves in. It was all so different yet familiar. The city was different, the buildings looked different, and the people dressed differently, but the sight of hookers, thugs, and addicts brought a feeling of nostalgia up in him. And he didn't want to be here if he was honest with himself. But more importantly, he didn't want Rias or these three white-haired kids to be here any longer. He hefted the girl in his arms into a princess carry and walked up to Rias, who was kneeling in front of the other two kids. A gentle smile came to his face when he saw how Rias gently comforted the two siblings that stood before her. He cleared his throat softly, making them pay attention to him. We should get going. Rias looked over her shoulder to nod at Naruto before she stood up, keeping a hand on the cute little girl's shoulder. Why you aren't going to take our S-sister with you, are you? The white-haired boy stuttered out fearfully, which caused Naruto to falter before he realized how this entire situation must have looked to the boy. Well, of course we are, Naruto said, and Rias nodded, which made the two children look worried for a moment. "Why are you looking so afraid? Of course, you two are coming with us as well." "Oh, are you sure?" the white-haired boy asked. "We don't have any money or valuables to repay you with." "Don't worry about that," Rias said calmly. "We've heard enough to know about your situation, so again, don't worry about anything for now, alright?" The two siblings looked unsure for a moment but agreed, nonetheless. "Then if you would all step closer to me, please?" Rias was quick to appear right next to her twin, and the two white-haired children followed soon after. Adjusting the girl in his arms, Naruto nodded to himself. "All right then, Artemisia, if you would?" No sooner than the young heir had said those words did the knight appear before them in a burst of speed, and barely even a second later a large magic circle opened beneath the group of devils, whisking them away in a bright flash of crimson light, leaving behind nothing but softly swaying embers of light in their wake. The girl twitched and writhed as she slowly came to again. She felt comfortable, more so than she had in a very long time. A soft and dreamy sigh escaped her lips as she felt her body being surrounded by a comforting warmth. She stretched out her legs and groaned lightly before she let her blue eyes flutter open. She looked around and couldn't help but feel confused at what she saw. She found herself to be in a very luxurious-looking room, and letting the palm of her hand ghost over the soft mattress she lay on confirmed that she was indeed lying in a bed. A very nice bed at that. She fought against her inner demons, against the voices in her head that told her to lay back down and enjoy this bed for as long as she was able to, but she didn't. She sat herself up and took another look around the room. Now how did she get here? The last thing she remembered was crying on that young lord's shoulder. Oh, Satan, did that really happen? The girl's eyes shot wide open, and her face heated up in embarrassment. She covered her burning face with her hands while simultaneously pulling her knees up to her chest. She couldn't believe that she would do something so embarrassing, and to make it even worse, she did it in front of a stranger. A stranger that just had to be a noble devil at that. And then another thing came to the forefront of her mind. I've hugged a noble devil and cried onto him. Her face heated up even more as she remembered the feeling of that boy's arms wrapped around her lithe frame, or the nice smell of expensive soaps and perfume that invaded her nose when she had buried her face into his shoulder. Oh, she felt so embarrassed right now. But her embarrassment quickly faded when she recalled that she just found herself lying on top of an expensive bed, within an expensive room, after crying herself to sleep in the arms of a stranger. Where are Lisanna and Elfman? Her eyes wide, the girl jumped up from the bed and ignored everything else as she quickly made for the door. She sighed in relief when the door opened without any resistance, and she quickly headed out the room where she found a long and well-lit hallway. She bit her lips left or right? Where could her little siblings be? She closed her eyes and tried to feel out Lisanna and Elfman's magic, but she couldn't. Something was clouding her senses, as if something was actively blocking magic. And that only made her worry more. She didn't care if that young noble took her with him. She didn't care if he wanted to use her or keep her as a toy, and if she was honest with herself, she always figured that sooner or later she would end up becoming a whore, but she wouldn't allow either of her siblings to suffer such a fate. She looked back and forth, left and right before she decided to simply go for it, and went down the left side of the hallway. She fidgeted with her hands, a nervous tic of hers, and looked around as she walked, staring in awe at the expensive decorations and beautifully placed flowers that she passed. After a few short moments of walking, she could faintly make out the sound of laughter and voices coming from somewhere down the hallway. She followed the sounds and soon found herself walking through an arch which led into a large and luxurious living room. And what she saw there nearly brought tears to her eyes. She saw her little siblings, and they were having fun, both of them were. Lisanna was on a couch, her little legs tucked underneath as she was talking animatedly with the crimson-haired girl, Lady Rias Gremory she reminded herself, who was sitting across from the little girl, talking back just as animatedly as her sister. And Elfman was sitting on the floor, seemingly playing some card game with the boy that was still haunting her mind. Her shy brother was smiling softly, and seemed to be enjoying himself more than he had in a long time. But what warmed her heart most was the fact that both of her siblings looked healthy and clean. Not a speck of dirt could be seen on either of them. Elfman's hair was neatly combed back, and Lisanna's short mane looked smooth and had a pretty shine to it. Both her little sibling were dressed in fresh and expensive-looking clothes, with Lisanna wearing a beautiful white dress and Elfman being dressed in fine black pants and a white button-up shirt. As much as it pained her to admit, she couldn't recall the last time that she could afford to get her little siblings a warm bath or let alone new clothes. She was speechless, utterly lost for words, and when the young crimson-haired boy turned to look at her, she felt her eyes water before she did the only thing that came to mind. She bowed her head at him in gratitude. "Oh good, you're finally awake." She heard his smooth, youthful voice, and she fidgeted in place when she could feel that the attention of the room was now solely on her. Which was proven to be true when she heard the voices of her little sibling call out her name before she was enveloped in a warm hug by both Elfman and Lysana. "Nei-chan/Miranei," both called, and she couldn't help but smile before wrapping her arms around the two children. "Hello, you two," she muttered softly, shyly even, as she tried not to pull too much attention onto her, a fruitless endeavor indeed. "Did you have a fun time?" Both siblings bobbed their heads quickly, and Lysana cried out, "Yep, we did. Naruto and Rias-chan have been really nice to us." Myra's eyes widened and snapped towards the two nobles when she heard her sister address them so casually. And when she saw both smile at her, she didn't know what she could say, or if she should feel worried or relieved. This wasn't at all how she imagined the nobility to act like. "That's good," she finally muttered while rubbing Lysana's head, feeling the softness of her little sister's freshly washed hair against her fingers. "I'm glad." She then felt Lysana grab her hand before the little girl bodily pulled her further into the room until she was left standing right in front of the handsome boy and his pretty sister. "Naruto, Rias, I'd like you both to meet my Wani-chan, Mira Jane," the little girl said with a big, toothy grin splitting her cheeks. Mira Jane, for her part, felt mortified to suddenly be the center of attention, but she had to be polite. Not only because she found herself in front of two important figures of the underworld, but also because they had taken care of her siblings while she was asleep. And that kindness meant a lot to her. She cursed herself for stuttering like that and took a deep breath, trying to will away the heat that she could feel crawling up her face. "It's a pleasure to meet you, my lord and lady." This time Mira bowed fully at the two noble siblings and quickly came to regret that decision when she heard the crimson-haired boy snort in amusement, while both the noble lady and her little sister giggled in amusement. Again, she could feel her face burn in embarrassment. Now she looked up and saw that the young lord was walking towards her and mentally prepared herself for the worst. Had she offended him in some way? She knew that she was still wearing her dirty and smelly clothes, so she wouldn't exactly call herself presentable, and maybe he'd taken offense to that? And then she felt his hands softly against her shoulders, so she closed her eyes and awaited the worst. Only to be pulled to stand upright, she opened her eyes and saw him smiling at her, noticing that she stood just a tad bit taller than the boy who, if she had to guess, couldn't be much older than Elfman, 12, or maybe 13 years old. "Hey now, there's no need to be afraid," he said gently while rubbing her shoulders. "And I'm sorry if we should have embarrassed you. I just thought that we were past the whole formality shtick after you used my shirt as a tissue earlier." Oh, he remembers all right. Mira Jane worried that her face would combust any second now from how embarrassed she felt. "Oni-chan," the crimson-haired girl cried loudly while jumping up from the couch and pointing an accusing finger at her brother. "What?" The boy turned his head slightly to look at his sister while still gently holding Mira by the shoulders. "You can't apologize for embarrassing a girl and then say something like that." "Why not?" Naruto sounded believably confused. "Ugh, why are you so dense?" "Because I'm not." And my name's actually Satan." "Oh wow." The boy gasped, "Actually Satan's kinda cute." "Naruto." The girl flushed in embarrassment. The boy laughed and shook his head. "You're far too easy to tease, Rias." The girl seemed to just shrug off her embarrassment before she too giggled, "And you're incorrigible." Mira Jane, for her part, felt a bit dumbfounded by the interaction she just witnessed. Were those two really nobles of the high class? They acted so normal. When she thought about noble devils, she always imagined them to be cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless towards the lower classes. And not like this. But Mira felt thankful for the noble siblings' bickering, as it did give her the time to get over her moment of mortification. She took a deep breath, took a step forward, and lightly, hopefully politely cleared her throat. "Lord and lady. Just Naruto and Rias will do fine." The boy cut her off quite rudely at that, and a part of her wished to pout at the boy. Alas, she was above such childish behavior. Alright, Naruto, I'd like to express my gratitude for taking care of my little siblings, and words cannot convey just how thankful I am for you treating them as kindly as you did. She hesitated for a moment as the words she was about to speak rang through her mind, words not spoken lightly within the underworld. "I'm in your debt." She rose her head slightly to look at the young lord's face, and she gulped when she noticed just how serious he looked. And then he once more shattered her worldview by grinning and waving his hand in a dismissive manner. Now don't sweat the small stuff, alright? Naruto said before giving her another grin, showing off his perfect pearly whites. You don't owe us anything. Oh, Mary Jane once more found herself fidgeting before this strange boy that acted so differently from any other devil she had met before. It's true what they say, she eyed both red-haired siblings curiously. The Gremrys truly are different from the rest. Now enough of all this formal and stiff business. Naruto clapped his hands before grabbing Mira by the shoulder and pulling her towards the couch his sister sat on. For now, why don't you have a seat, Mary Jane? Just relax while I'm gonna order you a good meal and have a nice, hot bath prepared for you. Myra's eyes widened and she quickly shook her head. Please, that's too much. You and your sister have already done so much for us. There is no need to bother yourselves even further for our sakes. Nonsense. Again, the strange noble waved her off and she leaped in surprise when he gave her a light shove, just hard enough that she would fall back onto the couch. Now just sit tight and relax, I'll be right back. And with that, the boy walked out of the living room and left her sitting there on the couch, next to his sister. There was a moment of awkward silence before Mira felt her little sister take a seat next to her, whereas Elfman went back to the card game that was set up on the floor a bit in front of the couch. She wrapped an arm around her little sister's waist and felt Lisanna nuzzle into her side. I apologize for my brother. Mira turned to face the pretty redhead sitting next to her. He can be a bit forward at times, but he means well. Please don't apologize for your lord brother's kindness. Mira waved her hands, which gained her a sweet laugh from the young lady. As my brother said, there's no need for any formality between us. Rias said while shaking her head. Just relax, alright? You're under my twin's protection, which is something that he takes quite seriously. Mary Jane frowned and looked down at her lap. Why would you do that? My siblings and I are nobodies and we have nothing to give you in return for all of this. Do we need a reason to help you? Rias asked before gently placing a hand onto Mary Jane's shoulder. Is it truly so hard to accept that we chose to help simply because we wanted to do so? Mira shook her head before looking at Rias. Forgive me, but yes, it is hard to believe, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Rias looked surprised for a moment before a sullen look overcame her features. So it's true, huh? What is true? The cruelty of the underworld. Mira looked at the young preteen in confusion. Something said redhead noticed and she elaborated. My brother and I grew up very sheltered. Our parents made sure that only our family's closest and most loyal servants were allowed to approach us, and today is the first time that we were allowed to leave our castle. But despite all those precautions our parents took to shield us from reality, we noticed, you know? We heard rumors, listened in on a few conversations, and we managed to form our own picture of what the underworld would be like. But until today it was just an assumption at best. But neither of us would have ever figured that the living conditions for the lower classes could be this bad. I am sorry. It's alright. Mira muttered with a small and fake smile on her lips. I've long since accepted that this is just how things are. You're an admirable woman, Mary Jane. I doubt that I could have done what you managed if our roles were reversed. Mira once more felt a slight heat on her cheeks as Rias spoke those praises. I didn't do much. The white-haired girl muttered bashfully. I just did what any older sibling would have done and tried to keep Elfman and Lisanna as safe as I could. And isn't that enough? Rias asked with a small grin. I mean, just look at those two cuties. You did incredibly well in raising them, especially since you had to do so alone. Thank you. Mira smiled even as a few tears trickled down her cheeks before she felt them being wiped away just as quickly as they appeared. Now, there's no need to cry anymore, Rias said softly while wiping away the tears that dribbled down the white-haired girl's cheeks. And it was at that moment that Naruto came walking back into the salon with two butlers following in his wake, both pushing serving trolleys before them. I hope that no one minds, but I've taken the liberty to order us all something to eat, the young Gremrier said with a big smile on his face. And Mira for her part most certainly didn't mind at all. Her tummy growled loudly when a heavenly smell invaded her nostrils. She could feel her mouth water and had to swallow the excess spittle that flooded her mouth. Her eyes were following the butlers as they worked quickly, elegantly, and precisely in preparing their accommodations for dining. And in pretty much no time at all there were several plates and utensils set up before her on the couch table. Once more a feeling of embarrassment welled up within her when she realized that she had no clue what utensils she was allowed to use, or with which dish she should start. Probably that soup, right? Or no, maybe she should start with those delicious-looking breadsticks and the small cheese platter? She looked up helplessly and noticed that the two butlers were already done, and in the process of leaving the room. She looked to her left, and noticed that Lisanna was already digging in with gusto, and looking down at the floor she saw Elfman do the same, eating while sitting on the floor with his meals set up before him on that expensive-looking carpet. She looked at Naruto to see if she could learn anything from him and saw that he had taken a seat in a big, comfortable lounge chair while holding a big bowl of some sort of noodle soup in his lap, slurping away at a thick bundle of noodles that were hanging from his mouth. But Naruto seemingly noticed her staring because he bit through the noodles, swallowed, and grinned at her. "Just eat, alright? Don't worry about if it's proper or not." Mira nodded before another question came to mind. But what is all of this? She gestured at the 4 different plates and the small little side dishes that were laid out before her. "It's a mushroom cream soup as hors d'oeuvre, the introductory course, then the plat principal, the main course, which is steak au poivre served with gratin savoyard and glazed green asparagus. Next there's a small fromage, a cheese course, and finally a fabulous tart tatin as the dessert," Rias explained to Mira, pointing out each of the dishes to the white-haired teen girl. Still, Mira didn't know what to make of most of the meals, but it sure smelled amazing, and with her stomach giving another angry growl, the white-haired girl decided to do what she had wanted to do since she first took in the delicious aroma of the food she dug in like she never had before. With the first bite, all worries left her mind as if they'd never been there in the first place. What were table manners, and who needed them? There was an order of eating those dishes. Well, not from Mira, who opted to dip some of the breadsticks from the cheese platter into the mushroom soup because it turned out to be tasty. And she found out that the cheese itself was very tasty when it was melting over a piece of steak. And in no time at all Mira was moaning as the tastes of apples, butter, caramel, and sugar were melting over her tongue. The girl just discovered her favorite dish, and it was as if her tongue was experiencing a culinary climax. She looked down at her dessert and bit her lip. She so wanted to destroy that delectable delicacy, but she also wanted to savor every speck of it. Decisions. If you want more where that came from, then all you have to do is ask. Mira blushed cutely when Rias called her out on her little dilemma, but she nodded and took another bite of delicious, fancy apple pie. So it was that Mira ended up devouring a total of 3 portions of tart tatin, and then promptly fell back onto the couch, well sated and utterly exhausted. "Well, someone was hungry," Naruto commented after finishing off his bowl of delicious ramen. "I'm glad that you enjoyed that, as I don't know what to order for you." "No, it was perfect, thank you," the white-haired girl muttered blissfully, which caused both Redhead's and Myra's siblings to laugh. "Good, and as I said earlier, once you're done resting for a bit there's a hot bath waiting for you," Naruto said, which garnered him a small, lazy nod from the white-haired teen girl. For the first time in basically forever, Mira Jane could say that she felt blissfully content. There were still worries on her mind, but they were much quieter now, and she could allow herself to relax for now. She watched through lazy eyes how her little sister was going back to talking with the red-haired princess while her brother went back to playing cards with the boy that made her experience all this splendor. How could she ever repay him for all of this, she wondered. If she were honest with herself, she wouldn't even mind if this was all just an act for her to lower her guard. Had these two not intervened earlier, then Mira would have accepted to become a pleasure girl, and what could be worse than that? Oh, sure, a few things came to mind, but she doubted that these 2 siblings could ever be such monsters. They seemed far too kind for something like that, well, or so she hoped. Still, the girl wouldn't care if they were to enslave her, use her or abuse her. If her siblings were kept from such a fate, then she wouldn't mind it at all. She was used to suffering already, so what if she had to suffer a bit more? Then again, maybe, if she was lucky, then perhaps the 2 nobles were truthful, but she wouldn't get her hopes up just yet. She sighed and pushed such thoughts away from the forefront of her mind and remembered that there was a hot bath waiting for her, and that was something which sounded fantastic to young Mira Jane. She looked at Naruto, who seemed to pick up on what she wanted before she even had to say it out loud. "Ready for your bath?" he asked, and she nodded. "All right, then let me show you the way." "You don't need to bother, Naruto-kun." Rias spoke up from next to her. "I wanted to take a bath as well, so long as you don't mind sharing, Mira Jane." "Oh, no." "Great. Then come on, let's go." The girl jumped up and grabbed Myra's hand before pulling the white-haired girl up onto her feet. And just like that, Mira found herself being pulled after the excited red-haired girl, and once more she had to wonder if those 2 siblings truly were of noble birth. Devilish revelations. "So, Mira Jane, mind telling me a bit about yourself?" Rias gently ran her fingers through her wet, crimson hair, wringing out some water before leaning back against the pleasantly warm stones of the bathroom. A magnificent bathroom indeed. The entire bathroom was created to give off the feeling of pure, undisturbed nature. The walls, the floor, the hot tub, they were all made from rustic, natural stones, and there were patches of grass, and flowers growing from in between the crevasses of stonework, and then there was fresh ivy that wound itself up and down the walls and the ceiling of the luxurious oasis of relaxation. What would you like to know, lady? What have I told you about formalities between us? Rias gave the white-haired beauty a mild glare, making the other girl fidget lightly. Mira nodded lightly. You said that there is no need to use them anymore, she muttered shyly. But what would you like to know, Rias-san? Whatever you'd be willing to share, Rias said, leaning forward to look at the white-haired beauty that was sharing the steaming bath with her. And truly, Mary Jane was one stunning young woman indeed. Rias had already noticed that, of course, and yet she still found herself surprised when the other girl had shyly disrobed herself before her. The platinum-haired devil possessed a womanly figure, her breasts then led to a firm and smooth stomach, although Rias did wince slightly upon noticing the signs of malnourishment on the poor girl. Alas, that was nothing that a few weeks under her family's care wouldn't be able to fix. In a way, Rias felt a tad jealous over the fact the white-haired girl was already so developed whereas she was not. Looking down at her own body revealed the sad truth, which was that she truly wasn't all that different from her twin brother when it came to their bodies. There was a slight swell to her breasts, and the obvious lack of a male appendage between her legs, but as of now, that was all she had to show. Rias-san? Mira asked lightly, giving the princess a strange look. Is everything all right? Oh yes, everything is fine. Why do you ask? It's nothing, I just noticed that you were looking a bit pouty, for lack of a better word, Mira said with a small, awkward smile on her lips. Rias blushed and averted her eyes from the other girl. Sorry, I was just lost in my head there. She looked back at Mira. Anyways, I would still very much like to know more about you, so if you wouldn't mind telling me, I'm all ears. Sure, I don't mind telling you everything you want to know, Rias-san, but I really don't know where to start, and there really isn't much to tell that you don't already know. Mira gave Rias an apologetic smile. Ah, come now, I'm sure you have plenty of stories to tell. The little princess put a finger to her chin and thought, do you know the game 20 questions? Myra's eyes lit up in recognition, and she quickly nodded her head. Great. Then let's play that game. You ask me a question and then I'll ask one in return, alright? Alright, Mira said with a little sparkle in her eyes before her expression changed into a thoughtful one as she wondered what she should ask Rias first. Oh, is it true that you and your brother are the miracles of ruin? Rias looked at the girl with wide eyes even as her mouth fell open into a cute little O. She held that expression for a while before. The red-haired minx snorted and started to giggle. The what now? The miracles of ruin, Mary Jane pouted when Rias's giggling increased. Okay, stop it. That's just what I've heard some lower-ranked devils say when they were talking about the children of Lady Venelana Gremory. And you are them, right? And you are twins, you said that yourself after all? Why yes, we are twins. Rias wheezed out, trying her hardest to restrain her laughter, which she managed after a few more moments of giggling to herself. I just had no idea that we'd already gained a moniker, and such a silly one at that. Ha, just wait until I tell Naruto-kun about that. Rias giggled once more. He'll be so embarrassed. Mary Jane's sweat dropped at the strange girl. So I take it that you don't like such monikers? Rias wiped away a few tears of laughter that had escaped her eyes before shaking her head. Personally, I don't care, and if it makes the lower classes feel better, then they can call me whatever they want. But I know that my brother will hate it. Why would your brother hate a moniker? Shouldn't that be something to take pride in? Mary Jane wondered. Nah, you've already asked me 2 questions now, little Miss Cheater. Rias wagged her finger at the older girl. It's my turn now. Mira blushed and pouted when she realized that Rias was talking to her as if she were a little child, but she nodded, nonetheless. Then let me start with a simple question. How old are you? Rias asked while turning to face the girl. I'm 14, Mira said without any preamble, not noticing the calculating glint in Rias's bluish-green eyes. 14, huh? So she was born not long after Lord Vasego died. Interesting. The crimson-haired girl never let her thoughts show openly, and just continued to play along with the white-haired beauty sitting in the tub across from her. They played, talked, and bonded until their skin started to shrivel, and Rias could visibly see how her newest friend was relaxing with every question that Rias answered. And after their bath had come to an end, the crimson-haired princess could say that she had gained a glimpse of the real Mary Jane, the one that was hidden beneath all the pain, all the suffering, and all that responsibility that she had been carrying for such a long time. And Rias truly liked what she saw. Yes, you will make a wonderful addition to our family, Mary Jane. Naruto smiled softly as he tucked both Elfman and Lee-sana into their bed. The 2 children had tired themselves out, Lee-sana watching some TV and Elfman trying to memorize the rules of Magic, the Gathering. They were sweet, both were, and Naruto couldn't express just how sorry he felt for that small family of 3. Truly, it was like looking at a mirror, as if his past life was reflected in each of those white-haired children. And yet he was glad that he met them when he did, because now, he could give them something that he had never been given as Uzumaki Naruto. Now he could give them help. He sighed and made sure that both sleeping kids were properly tucked into their blanket before nodding to himself and walking out of the room. He closed the door behind him before walking back into the living room of their hotel suite. He checked the time and couldn't help but shake his head as he did. Guess Rias-chan is determined to make Mira Jane feel welcome, that, and the little minx is probably satisfying her curiosity while she's at it. Well, it was getting close to 3 a.m. in the morning, so perhaps he should turn in as well, but before he could do so, he heard the bell of the elevator go off. He looked at the elevator and waved upon realizing that it was just his older brother coming back from his day at Satan Palace. Yo! Naruto? Surzex walked into the suite, taking off his jacket before lazily throwing it over the couch. Why in the world are you still awake at this time of night? Do you have any idea what mother would do to me if she ever found out about this? Naruto sighed before walking up to his older brother. Well, it's quite a long story. I can imagine, Lucifer muttered before taking a look around the room, raising an eyebrow when he noticed the lack of someone. Where is Artemisia? She's cleaning up loose ends, Naruto stated, which made Surzex even more confused. Okay, explain. And so, Naruto prepared to do just that, but again, he was cut off just before he could begin by the sound of girlish laughter coming from the direction of the bathroom. Both Surzex and Naruto looked in the direction the noises came from and saw both Rias and Mary Jane come walking into the living room. Both girls were dressed in pajamas and had towels wrapped around their heads. When the two girls spotted Naruto and Surzex, they halted in their steps, while Rias did. Mary Jane for her part froze in place upon seeing the form of Surzex standing there. She recognized him from the news feeds that were sometimes broadcasted in inns or large public places. Yes, she recognized the king of the underworld. She gulped and tried to keep herself standing even though her legs shook and she could feel sheer terror overwhelm her entire being. Lord Lucifer. The girl muttered silently before she felt her mind give out on her, and she fainted on the spot. The 3 red-haired siblings blinked. Once, twice, and a third time. It's been a while since that happened to me, Surzex muttered while scratching the back of his head. Then his sweat dropped upon noticing that both Naruto and Rias were suddenly glaring at him as if he'd just kicked their puppy or something. Okay, what's with that look? Nothing that happened here is my fault, so why don't you do me a favor and start explaining what the hell's going on here? Alright? Rias huffed and turned away from the ruler of the underworld. Naruto-kun will explain everything you need to know, Oni-sama. Now if you both would excuse me, I'm going to tuck Mira-chan into bed. With that said, Rias picked Mira Jane up into a princess carry, acting as if the girl in her arms weighed nothing at all, and then she marched off, leaving behind the 2 brothers. Okay, sorry for my lack of decorum, but what the actual hell is going on here? As I said, Oni-chan, it's a long story, so you might want to take a seat. Naruto sighed, and both sat down on the couch before the younger brother started with his recount of the day's events. Surzex stayed silent all the while and just listened, but at the end of the story, he couldn't help but shake his head in disbelief. And then he paled when another thing came to his mind. Mother will never let me hear the end of this. Oh yeah, she had officially fucked up, there was no doubt left in her mind about that. When the kid died and his spirit faded, she figured that she too would pass on for a time, until her body would reform itself. But that was just speculation since she had never expired before. Perhaps it was stupid to jump into the unknown like that, but if she was honest with herself, there was a certain flare of excitement about it. The thrill of the unknown. And after living for thousands of years, experiencing something new was a treat. Or so she thought, and boy, was she ever wrong. When the kid did draw his last breath, she too did pass on. Problem was, she truly passed on, as in her spirit went the high road, and then she found herself standing before Kami-sama herself. A very pissed-off Kami-sama, and now that wasn't something that Kurama had accounted for. Yes, mistakes were made. Do you have any idea what you did, fool? Kurama trembled as the wrath of a true deity washed over her form, pushing down on her massive frame, trying to squash her as if she was nothing more than a mere bug before a boot. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt afraid. Your careless disregard of human life ruined a divine plan that was hundreds of years in the making. The heavens wept, the earth trembled, and the air was split by lightning as Kami-sama allowed her rage to flow. 3. It felt apocalyptic in every sense of the word. I. Silence, child. Kurama gulped and lowered her head. I do not wish to hear excuses. I know why you allowed Naruto to perish, and I find your reasoning to be lacking. A deafening crack of thunder followed Kami-sama's every word. Alas, the deed has been done. The child of prophecy is no more, and drastic measures must be taken if the elemental nations shall survive the coming threat. My lady, I'll do whatever it is you require of me, Kurama spoke through gritted teeth, hating the fact that she had to prostrate herself before the goddess. But she would do so if it meant that she would survive. But Kurama, I don't need you to do anything. There was a wicked smile on Kami-sama's face. You see, the Akatsuki want to capture you. They need to capture you for their plans to reach completion, and the easiest way to foil their plans would be to simply remove you from the equation. If Kurama was physically able to pale, then she would do so. What do you mean by that, Kami-sama? Kurama asked fearfully, completely ignoring any pretense. What was pride? She didn't have any of that. You see, Kurama, I didn't like it when my child of prophecy was robbed of the life that he was supposed to live. I did not like that at all, so I intervened. When he died, I took his soul aside, comforted him, and then asked him if he wanted to be reborn with his memories intact. He accepted. Even now as we speak, Naruto-kun is in the process of starting his second chance, and I'm planning on sending you along for the ride. Why you can't be as serious? UW would once more lock me up inside of that bee-brat. Now I never said anything about sealing you within Naruto-kun. Kami-sama spoke lightly yet sternly. That would be far too easy, and it wouldn't be a fitting punishment for your callous actions. No, that wouldn't do at all. You will be sent into the same world that Naruto-kun now calls his own, but you will not be reborn, as you do not deserve to have parents that would care for you. I will also seal away most of your vast power, only allowing you to use enough that you can defend yourself from common thugs and ruffians, but not enough that you could ever become a menace to anyone but yourself. Kurama closed her eyes tightly to stave off the moisture she could feel welling up in her eyes. And there will be only one way to lift the seals placed upon your might. Find Naruto and beg for his forgiveness. If he sees fit to grant you forgiveness, then your power shall be restored in full. If not, then you shall live out your life as a shell of your former self. When Naruto needed your aid, you saw fit to deny him, and now he shall hold the same power over you. And now begone. Gasp. Kurama shot up into a sitting position, while her breath escaped her lungs in a loud and violent gasp that left her panting. She grabbed her head with both hands and pulled her knees up to her chest as those awful memories once more haunted her dreams. She took a shuddering breath while trying to calm herself from yet another violent episode, which was something that she was quite accustomed to already. After all, this new life was her divine punishment. And Kami-sama made sure that Kurama wasn't given any respite at all. Her days were spent fighting for survival, and her nights were spent fighting against her nightmares. The last 12 years of her life had been the true definition of hell. This was quite ironic since Kurama was trapped within hell itself. The Biju sighed and pulled her head up from between her knees to look around before a low growl escaped from the back of her throat. Words could not describe just how much she hated her new lease on life. She hated everything about it. She hated herself, she hated her new form, she hated her new world, she hated every single devil that she passed on the street, she hated everything. And if she had her full power, then nothing would be spared from her wrath. But such thoughts only made her sigh once more. Her wrath was a bad joke at best. Over the last 12 years, Kurama had learned what it meant to be weak. She had learned the hard way how it felt to be helpless. Kami had given her a frail female form, so Kurama had learned what it felt like to experience hunger and thirst. She now knew what it was like to be starving, and she knew how it felt like to nearly die of thirst. All those experiences and sensations were nearly enough to make her vomit in disgust.